Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Irish Breakdown Podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Happy Friday, everyone. Week from today, folks, Notre Dame kicks off their spring practice. So the offseason is flying right along. Not that any of us are upset about that. We get to get a first look at the Notre Dame 2026 football team with, almost everybody's on campus. There's a handful of scragglers that'll be coming in over the summer, but man, going to be our first look.
I'm telling you, Premer, you called him a scraggler. Oh, I'm so telling. You're in trouble. I'll call Teddy Gerard a scraggler.
I guess so, man. I guess so. But very excited to watch this team in any sort of capacity out in the spring. Hopefully they release some sort of highlight video as well, so then everybody else can see it. But before we get to all that fun stuff, Brian, we have a Friday Free-For-All Mailbag today. And folks, if this does happen to be your first Friday Free-For-All Mailbag, really any mailbag, you can always put MB or a mailbox emoji before your question or comment, really before your submission. That lets us know to set that question aside, and then we'll get to it as the show progresses. And then obviously super chats always get bumped to the top. But it's one of my favorite segments of the week, man. We get to hear back from our daily listeners and answer some of the questions that they've had. So looking forward to another good one.
Yeah, and we're going to get things started off, Trev, with Josh Buffo, the motivational business banker.
When Coach Freeman wins a national championship this year, who could you say his trajectory has been more similar to? Saban, Meyer, Smart, or Sweeney?
Of that group, it's definitely not Dabo, because Dabo actually struggled for a while at Clemson before he was able to get things going. So it wasn't really until I shouldn't say that. He started winning before he hired Brent Venables, but they were like, he was a little bit on the hot seat, because even when years where they were winning, they would finish with like really bad losses. Like they went 10-4 in 2011, which was, what year was that for Dabo? Was that was year 4? So they went 9-5, 6-7, and then they go 10-3 in the regular season, 9-3 in the regular season. Beat Virginia Tech for the ACC title. He had been getting dominated by Florida State and South Carolina up until that season. South Carolina still beat them, but they beat Florida State that year, which I think was the first time they beat Florida State. And then they went to the Orange Bowl and got destroyed by West Virginia, 70-33. And I believe that's when he fired Kevin Steele, hires Brent Venables in 2012. And that's really when things took off for him in the program. And, obviously they had a lot of success the next couple of years with Taj Boyd, went 11-2, 10-3, and then, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, they were a dominant program. So I think Freeman's already way surpassed what Dabo did his first 4 years. I mean, it's not even close. I'd say probably closest of that group, Trev, probably closest to Kirby. I think Kirby's the one that makes the most sense, because Kirby's only ever been a head coach of one place. He was a defensive coordinator before that, and Freeman's not his alma mater. That's the only kind of the difference there. But when you look at the job Kirby did, he had Georgia playing for the national title in year 2, took Freeman year 3. He didn't win his first title till year 6, however. Hopefully it doesn't take Freeman 6 years to win his first title. Actually, you know what? I don't care. 6 years is next year. So if it takes him 6, it takes him 6. But, he's kind of getting up to that point in time. I think it's very comparable to what Kirby has done. And what I would say gives Freeman a little bit of an advantage over Kirby, and then there's an area where I think Kirby's done a little bit of a better job than Coach Freeman. I think Coach Freeman recognized much earlier than Kirby Smart that, hey, it's okay to have a big-time offense. And I think it took Kirby Smart until year 5 to kind of figure that out. Even with his first year at Todd Monken, I don't know that they really were pursuing that, although it can be hard to tell, Trev, because that first year at Todd Monken was the COVID year. So they might have just been playing it safe because they didn't have an offseason to really install what he wanted to do. And then obviously year 2 and year 3 of Todd Monken, they win a title. So, I think that's the closest similarity. Where Kirby, I think, did a better job than Freeman was. I don't know. I shouldn't say better job than Freeman. We'll find out this year if Kirby's done a better job than Freeman in regard to some of the coaching staff hires on defense, especially the coordinators. So I think their defense was elite for a long time. Notre Dame's defense has been really flipping good the last couple of years. We'll find out if that can continue under Chris Ash. But that's the TBD. Offensively, I think Freeman's already well ahead of where Kirby was, and I think he's recruiting at a pretty elite level, which is what Coach Smart did also. That'd be the one that I would think makes most sense. Saban had been kind of like all over the place. He was at Toledo, then he went to Michigan State. Didn't really win big till he got to his third program. Urban Meyer was at Bowling Green. Then he goes to Utah. Didn't really win big until his third program. So those, to me, don't really have a whole lot of relevance to the path that we've seen from Marcus Freeman. I think Kirby Smart's one that makes most sense. What say you, Trev?
Yeah, I'd also say Kirby. I mean, also was a defensive coordinator for a while before he took over as head coach. So you have that similarity as well. And just depending on the season, there's a lot of similarities as well. I mean, Georgia in 2017 is very similar to what Notre Dame was in 2024. Made a push to go play for the national title, ended up falling short, built around a really strong run game and a good defense. So definitely a lot of similarities between them. I'm with you with Kirby Smart.
All right, let's get to, we got a super chat that just popped up down here from our guy, Drew, UT Irish 55. Let's say this, Trev, it goes, every great Notre Dame defense seems to have a dominant linebacker leading the way. Who is that guy for this team? And if there isn't one, how much does that limit the defense? My pick is number 34. So, Drew, thank you so much for the super chat. But, Trev, I'm going to allow you to answer this one. So, every great Notre Dame defense seems to have a dominant linebacker leading the way. Who has that guy for this team? And if there isn't one, how much does that limit the defense?
I guess I'll kind of work back to front with this one. How much does it limit the defense? I don't know if it's going to limit Notre Dame's defense if they don't have a great linebacker, if they don't have somebody that has a Manti Te'o or Jalen Smith level of prowess on the defense. I don't think that inhibits them that much because you could argue the linebacker play at Notre Dame has been really, really good. But some of the things that make it good is that there's not just one individual guy that's head and shoulders above the rest. 2024, they were a dominant defense, and their starting middle linebacker was a true sophomore. You know, Jack Kaiser was the old stingy veteran that was, very experienced, broke the record for how many games played in a Notre Dame uniform, but he wasn't the star of that defense. So how much does it limit that defense? Not overly too much. Now, you're talking to two guys who both predicted Drake Bowen to be a breakout player. He's going to become a national household name. Obviously, a lot of coaches who talk about Drake Bowen speak very highly about him, but my pick would also be number 34, Drew. I like the way that you're thinking, but in general, it's not like Notre Dame's defense is going to be they have the potential to be the best or a top 3 unit, but if one of Drake Bowen or Kingston or Jalen Sneed or Jaden Osbury or, Madden Framo aren't winning the Butkus Award, then now they're a top 10 defense. It's nothing like that.
I would argue that yes, they had an elite linebacker in 2012. Yes, they had an elite linebacker in 2015. Yes, they had an elite linebacker in 2019 and 20, especially 2020 when Jeremiah Wusu-Koramoah won the Butkus Award. But the complementary linebackers to each of those guys were not great. And so you could make a case that the best linebacker room that Notre Dame had in the last 15 years, 20 years, really since 05, 06, because I think we've talked about this. I think the Brandon Hoyt, we agree, Brandon Hoyt and Corey Mays were a really good duo. Since then, I'd argue the best duo is 2018, not 2012, not 2015, not 2020, but 2018. And I don't think that you could say that Tavon or Drew Tranquill were necessarily like elite players, but I think they were both dominant. And so you had Manti was dominant, elite, however you want to describe it, in 2012. Jalen was that in 2014 and 15. And Jeremiah was that in 2020. But the unit wasn't necessarily elite. I would rather have 2 really good linebackers than one elite linebacker and one guy who's just kind of solid. And I think that's what this defense has. I absolutely believe that both Drake Bowen and, if healthy, Kingston Viliama-Asa can be dominant players. But I'll be honest, I also think that Jaden Osbury can. I think it's more of, it's kind of like the sum of the parts. There's a lot of really good players. It's like what we talked about yesterday, Trev. I don't know if I don't know if Drake Bowen's going to become an elite star player this year. I don't know. I don't know that Kingston's going to be that this year because of the knee injury. I don't know if Jaden Osbury or Jalen Sneed or Matt Faramo are going to become those guys. What I will say is this: as a unit, they're elite. Or at least they can be elite. I don't think you definitely need an elite player at every position to have an elite group. I think at certain positions you do. Like, I think to have like the best receiving core in the country, you need one guy that's really good, I think. But if you have Jeremiah Smith and the other two guys are just okay, then I don't know. You may have the best receiver in the country. You don't have the best receiving core in the country. And so that's why I think that I don't think it'll limit this defense. In theory, if you don't have a dominant linebacker, it can limit your defense if you don't have a big-time defensive line or if you're in a system that requires your linebackers to be dominant players. It can be limiting. And I do think that Notre Dame's defense will be one that asks its linebackers to do a lot. So if they're not dominant, I think that is limiting. I just think that Drew, KVA, I think that Jaden Osbury can be that. I think they're dominant, but I just think as a unit, they're dominant. Or at least they have the potential that they can be a little bit more consistent to be dominant. But there's a lot of games last year where I thought they were dominant. There was games that they weren't. They weren't very good against Miami. They were okay against Texas A&M at times. As the season went on, they got better and better. And last 7, 8, 9 games of the year, for the most part, they were dominant. And I think they'll be that again this year as they go into year 2 of this defense.
Yeah, that's for sure. From Trev's buy, sell, hold glasses, if projected starters for offense were flipped to defense and vice versa, where would players line up?
All right, we're gonna go. We're gonna do a little necessary roughness. There's a question in there later about necessary roughness, so we're gonna do a little necessary roughness, Trev. We're gonna do one sub. Remember, in necessary roughness, they had one sub. So when they'd go defense, they'd take out Paul Blake and put in the ninja. So we'll take out CJ Carr and we'll put in, got to pick an offensive player. We'll put in, Kedron Young, so we can get another linebacker. So my line is going to look like this. We're going to go to an old school 5-2 defense. We're going to give up a lot of points, but we're going to play a 5-2, baby. And my 5-2 defense is literally going to look like the 5-man offensive line. That's basically what it's going to be. My 2 linebackers are going to be Kedron Young and, well, I'm starting James Flanagan here at tight end for the purposes of this conversation. He'll be my other linebacker. So Kedron and him, I'll have Aeneas as my nickel. And I feel like I'm missing somebody. I can't have a nickel. I have Aeneas as one of my safeties. I'll have Jaden Greathouse as one of my other safeties, and I'll have Mylan Graham and Jordan Faison as my corners because that makes the most sense. So cheated a little bit, but that's the best I can do for you today when it comes to that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, the lines, you can just go ahead and switch them, I suppose. I mean, the interior defensive lineman would just be my interior offensive lineman. I'd cheat a little bit. I'd put Devin Houston on my interior, but that's just because he was a defensive lineman at this time last year or close to. Gosh. Yeah, I mean, I'd probably just run a triple option offense and put Drake Bowen at my quarterback. He's already the leader of the defense. Think he could be the leader of the offense.
Okay.
One of my receivers.
He's not pitching the ball. Drake is not pitching the ball. He's keeping it.
He'll have 40 rushing attempts a game.
He's checking the quarterback duck and quarterback trap every play. There's no question about it.
My receiving core, and unfortunately, I don't know if there was any defensive players that played quarterback in high school now that Josh Burnham's gone, but my receiving core would be absolutely filthy. To the boundary, I'd have Joey O'Brien. To the field, I'd have Aiden Pouncey. And in the slot, I'd have
Tay played quarterback in high school.
Okay, well, then Tay's going to be my quarterback then. And then my other receiver, my slot receiver would be Dallas Golden. So my receiving core would be disgusting. And then defensively, I echo a lot of the same that you would. So
you could make a better offense with your defensive players than vice versa.
Absolutely.
If you're going to project the starting offensive line. Now, if I could take 11 guys off the offense and make a legitimate 11, then that would be a little bit different. But when you ask me to flip the offense and the defense, and I got 5 offensive linemen to work with, it's going to make it a little bit harder to do. So, yeah. Okay. All right, let's get this. Got a statement here from Aiden Benami. He says, I really think many people are underestimating how good Aeneas, Kedron, and James will be. I think Aeneas is going to show out. Okay. Thank you for sharing that statement with us. So we will see how that goes. I don't know that I don't know who you're referring to, because I definitely don't feel like that is us, and I can't speak for other people. So I think we talk about those three guys a lot. I don't know that there's a bigger fan of Nolan James Jr. in the fan base than there is me. So I'm not really sure who you're referring to, but those people need to recognize.
From Tommy Tough Nuts, what are Jack Larson's measurables? Could he be used as an H-back? Has Mike Denbrock ever utilized the tight end like an H-back? Thinking of some similar to Tommy Tremble, but with more receiving attempts.
No, he's 6'3", 250. I mean, I think he could do that. They have done that, though. I mean, that's basically how they used their second tight end. I mean, their second tight end is almost never attached to the line of scrimmage. He basically does what an H-back does. He just does it from a little bit different angles, because an H-back's not a fullback. An H-back is somebody who's usually outside in a wing position, moving around. It's exactly what the number 2 tight end at Notre Dame's offense does. So, yeah, I think he uses that all the time. Used that last year. That's the role that Ty Washington played last year. And so do I think Jack's capable of doing that? Sure. You know, obviously the coaches don't think he can do it as well as Ty Washington at this point in time, but that would be the role he would play. I think they're capable of using the second tight end as more of a traditional tight end, but they have used it essentially like how you use an H-back. I mean, even to the point where they'll motion them to the middle and they'll lead block an ISO. So, yeah, they do all the things that you'd want a H-back to do. So,
yeah.
Certainly. Got some interesting questions, Trev.
I know.
Here's one. Let's just get these couple of these out of the way from Trev's Bicycle Hold Glasses.
In the theme of choose violence, who would win in a fight, Jim Phillips or Brett Yormark?
None of the above. They'd knock. It'd be like the Step Brothers fight. They'd both hit each other over the head and knock each other out. Because
yeah, it'd be like the end of Rocky 2 when both Apollo and Rocky go down, but neither of them get up.
But it would look way more soft and weak. Like, you know, if they were
full
both
speed.
big
dorks. Full speed, it would look like what it did in slow motion in the end of Rocky 2.
Mm-hmm. This is a different one.
Oh, gotcha. From Trev's Buy-Sell Whole Glasses, who would you prefer to win in a fight, Jim Phillips or Brett Yormark?
None of the above. Take each other out. That's why I use the Step Brothers thing. You both knock each other out, and then I'm good to go. So, yeah, interesting start to the day so far. Let's get to PJC.
Thoughts on Brian Kelly destroying an apartment building for his dream home?
Did he really do this?
Mm-hmm. That's what he talked about in the interview.
Really? I only listened to a little bit of that. I can't listen to that clown. He admitted that? Where?
I'm not sure. Wherever his house was in South Bend, I guess.
Oh, he did it in South Bend?
Wherever his house was when he was coaching at Notre Dame.
Yeah, I'm reading it now. What an absolute moron. Like, okay. Look, I don't have a problem tearing down an apartment complex if it's sold and nobody's living there. It is what it is. But just why are you talking about this? So you can he is the king of like saying things that he thinks is really going to hit. Like, this is going to really land. Like, I'm going to land the plane on this. And it just doesn't. You know, and it's also a bald-faced lie. So I just read that was the thing he said in regards to we had no intention of leaving Notre Dame. That's a bald-faced lie. Brian Kelly tried to leave Notre Dame like 4 different times before he left in 2021. He tried to leave in 2012. He tried to leave in 2015. He tried to leave in 2016. He tried to leave before 2020 and after 2020. And like everybody like kind of knew he was leaving soon. There was not a question of would he leave soon. It was, is he going to leave now or next year? So this notion that like he was like forever Notre Dame until that dream job of LSU came free. It's a lie. It's just what he does, though. I mean, look, there's nothing that Brian Kelly does better than BS. That is literally his number one skill at this point in time, and has been for 10 years. He just makes stuff up. He just lies, and he has no problem lying whatsoever. The notion that he built this home and it was his dream home, like, dude, shut up. Like, how stupid do you think people are? Like, do you still think people believe that? Well, fortunately, I'm here to point out that it's an absolute lie and remind people that Brian Kelly tried multiple times to leave Notre Dame. And it wasn't until 2021 that some big-time program was stupid enough to hire him as their head football coach. So I just read the quote. Absolute lie. That's an absolute lie. Look, you tear down an apartment complex that's no longer standing to build a home. It is what it is. Now, you kick a bunch of people out of their home because you just bought the property and bought the land and you want to kick everybody out. But yeah, it makes you a scumbag. I doubt that's what happened. Because if that's what would have happened, that probably would have gotten a little bit more news. You know what I mean, Trev? Like, so, but why are you sharing this? Like, just say, hey, we had just built our dream home. Why is that detail necessary?
If you have the amount of money to buy out a property that an apartment complex sits on to build your dream home, you get zero sympathy from me that you then all of a sudden had to move against your plans. You get none.
Chose to take another job.
And what's unfortunate, and I'm not going to spoil too much because we have another mailbag question about it. I remember it coming in, but that wasn't even the worst thing that he said in this interview.
That's going to be fun. I know the guys talked about it in the show last night. I just didn't really listen to the interview. I listened to like one part of it. I read a couple quotes, and I'm like, he got what he got. So, yeah. This is very well played from Vince Trowbridge, the VP of IB. How many Notre Dame players will have 4+ sacks? How many will have 15 to 20 pressures? And who will lead Notre Dame in tackles for loss in the regular season? That's a good question. 4+ sacks. I'm going to go, it says entire season, in the regular season. Okay. So in the regular season, I'm going to go the starting ends. That's a no-brainer for me. Boubacar and Bryce Young. I'm going to go Keon Keeley, and I'm going to go Jason Onye. We'll have 4+ sacks. 20+ pressures in the regular season. I'll go Keon. I'll go the same 3 DNs. I'll go Jason Onye. I'll go Francis Brew. And if Kingston's healthy for week 1, Kingston will have over 20 as well. If not, and he's not the nickel because they're not wanting to use him as much this year as he recovers, then I'd say Jalen Sneed gets to 20. Whoever that nickel linebacker pass rusher is, it'll be one of Jalen Sneed or Kingston Asa or Logan Thomas. I could see Logan, if Kingston's not fully back, instead of a linebacker, I could see them putting Logan Thomas there and using his speed. So he'll be my sneaky 20+ pressures. And if Logan has that role for a chunk of the season, he'll get to 4 sacks. I just don't know that he's going to have that role. But he'd be the other candidate for me, Trev. What say you?
Yeah, we see the defensive ends very similar. 4+ sacks in the regular season. Definitely them. I think Keon Keeley will sneak in there as well. This one's a little bit more of a projection, but I'm also going to add Armel Mukam into that list. If he breaks out, he has a different set of skills than what some of the other defensive tackles do. I think Armel Mukam could get himself at least in that 15 to 20 pressures range. And then who leads Notre Dame in tackles for a loss in the regular season? Probably Boubacar. I mean, since tackles for loss also count as sacks, I think whoever the sack leader is going to give himself a strong leg up there.
Well, and unlike some other guys we've seen in the past, like Riley Mills, I think in 2024, I think he only had I'm looking it up now. I think he only had 1 more tackle for loss than he had sacks, I believe. So, yeah, 2024, Riley had 8.5 tackles for loss, and he had 7.5 sacks, right?
Yep.
And so then in 2023, Javonte Jean-Baptiste had a good year like this, 10.5 tackles for loss, 5 sacks. 2022, Isaiah Foskey had 22 sacks or had 11 sacks and 14 tackles for loss. I know Stephon Tuitt was a guy that had like one more tackle for loss than he did sacks. But it was 2021, Isaiah Foskey had 11 sacks and only 12.5 tackles for loss. I like the fact that Boubacar had 3.5 more tackles for loss than he did sacks last year. If you project that over the course of the season, getting him to 10 sacks would – actually, I'll just do the math here real quick instead of me trying to do pretend math and then somebody actually figures it out and they're like, actually, Brian, if he would have done – you know what I mean? So if he would have had – so he had let's go 400 and let's see here. Let's go – he had 6.5 sacks, right? Cool. Yeah. So let's go. I got to think about how to properly do this. All right, times 10. So he'd have 15 tackles for loss if he got to 10 sacks. A little over 15. So maybe he'd get to 15.5. I love that from an end. I don't want an end to just have like 7 sacks and 8 tackles for loss or 10 sacks and 11 tackles for loss. I want him to make plays in the run game. That's what made Javonte Jean-Baptiste so good 2 years ago, is it wasn't just 5 sacks and then 7 tackles for loss. It was 5 sacks and then like 10.5 tackles for loss. Like that's where I want it to be. So I agree with you. I think he's only going to get better.
Absolutely. From Brandon Gilbert, Necessary Roughness is the greatest sports movie ever made by humans. It's sad that you need hot takes about the Texas State Armadillos to boost ratings. You will never be Paul Blake.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
From Jacob Sweat. Hypothetical. You're Gene Corrigan in 1986. Lou Holtz is not available. Who's your next call? Love you guys.
I honestly, Jacob, have no idea. Like, no idea. I'd have to go back and look and see. Here, I'll try to answer the question. So 1985 college football season. Let me go try to look and see a couple other programs that might have made some sense. Let me see who might have been a good coach. Hey, you're not going to hire Hayden Fry. No, I don't want a cheater, so I'm not going after Barry Switzer because I don't want to get put on probation. So that wouldn't have worked. Let me go. I'm trying to find somebody. Was RC the coach then? No, still Jackie Sherrill. Don't really need anybody that's willing to castrate a bull in front of the team. So we're not going to hire Jackie Sherrill. Oh boy. I'll tell you. Well, no, he wasn't coaching at the time. Oh, here's a good one I'll get to in a second. I think I have my answer, but I'm going to check and see if there's anybody else that might fit before I go there. But let me see here. Was he at Duke yet? Let me see here. Nope. Let's see. All right. So I think I have my answer, Trev. Who I would have hired in 1985 if Lou Holtz wasn't available. Let's say he couldn't take the job. I know who I would have hired. Been 1 or 2 coaches. I would have gone out of the box and hired a guy that was currently coaching in the USFL. Real offensive-minded guy. Played quarterback. Won a Heisman. Beat him in the Orange Sugar Bowl in 1991. Guy by the name of Steve Spurrier. I'd have got him before Duke got him. That would have been one angle. The other one I would have probably gone after, Trev, that would have actually made a lot of sense is I would have gone out to the West Coast. I would have seen if Terry Donahue wanted to come and take the job. I think Terry Donahue at that time was really cooking at UCLA. In the 4 previous seasons before 1986, when you needed to hire Coach Holtz, they had finished 5th, 17th, 9th, and 7th. They had won 3 of the previous 4 Rose Bowls. They were coming off in 1985, a 9-2-1 season in which they had beaten number 4 Iowa in the Rose Bowl. So Terry Donahue would have been my guy. Now, some of y'all may not like this, but the recruiting coordinator back then would have been a guy with the last name Reese. Because I believe at that time, Bill Reese was his was his Vinny Serrato. So that's probably Trev, those would have been my two. Looking back on it, those probably would have been my two top picks.
That's not bad. Looking back in time, if I could, I guess the only answer that I had in my head was to see if I could steal Jimmy Johnson from Miami, I guess, because he would only have been a coach at that point in time for like 2 years, but that's probably the only name that came to mind. Outside of that, I would have seen if Lou Holtz had a long lost brother named Hugh Loltz and just seen if he wanted to come to Notre Dame.
Lou Holtz isn't available, but this guy Hugh Loltz, it's a Minnesota wants the job.
Lou Holtz with a mustache.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are my two picks, Terry Donahue or Steve Spurrier.
Yeah, I like it.
Yep, that'd be fun. All right, let's go to next question here. We got one from Tommy Toughnuts, a.k.a. Tommy Guns, for all those wondering where Tommy Guns is gone.
A few first-time starting quarterbacks that we think might kill it this year.
First-time starting quarterbacks that I think might kill it this year. Well, I don't know if he'll kill it, but I am very curious to see what Jared Curtis is going to look like by the time we get to November. I think that they'll end up giving him the job at Vanderbilt. I think he'll have some struggles early on, but I think as we get to, deeper into the season, I think he's a guy that could have some success. Let me go through here. Aaron Philo, I think at Florida, is technically going to be a first-time starter. He has started a couple games in replace of. And Trev, interject anybody you think of as I'm talking through this. You don't have to wait till I'm done if somebody pops in your head. But when I think first-time starter, I don't think guy that stepped in for an injury. Like, I don't count the North Carolina game in 2017 as Ian Book being a starter. I think he started that game because Brandon was hurt. He didn't really become the starter until he stepped in full-time into the lineup in 2018. That's kind of how I view Aaron Philo. He's going to Florida. He's going to have talent around him. And he's one of those guys that transferred somewhere to follow his coach. And we've seen a lot of success with that recently, Trev, where, Devin Dampier did that obviously last year for Utah. Why was Devin Dampier able to make a quick transition from New Mexico? Was he at New Mexico State or New Mexico? I always get those two confused. I think he might have been at New Mexico.
I think New Mexico.
And then he goes with him. Well, why did he not struggle like a lot of other G5 guys have struggled when they make the move? Because he followed his offensive coordinator. He didn't have to learn a new system. So I think that's one of those things that helps. But you got one that popped in your head, Trev? Because
and obviously
pops into mine.
Yeah, and there's obviously a bias here, but I think Kenny Minchie might do some really good things in Will Stein's offense at Kentucky. FanDuel just released their over-under for win totals this year, and Kentucky's at 4.5, over-under 4.5. I think Kenny Minchie might have something to say about that.
And they did a really nice job of building around him. They went to the portal, got some linemen, some running backs, some receivers, so Kenny won't be a one-man show. Chris Vizina at Clemson is one. There's a guy we talked about yesterday, Lincoln Kineholtz from Louisville, who transferred from Ohio State. I think look, you and I are not Miller Moss fans, Trev. We have been very adamant about that, and I think that our support of that was shown last year. But he still threw for over 2,600 yards and 16 touchdowns last year. And, I think the other kid will do better, in my opinion. Go through a couple more here. ACC.
Whoever wins the Bama starting job, I think is going to have a good year this year. One of Keelan Russell or Austin Mack.
Yeah, I like that one. I kind of count Cutter Boley as starting last year. Once he kind of got thrust into the lineup, he was good to go. So I won't count him as a first-time starter.
Who did Arizona State get out of the portal? Because I like the receiver pickups. Oh, okay.
Cutter Boley.
That's why I was thinking. Okay.
Like, he didn't start the season as the starting quarterback at Kentucky, but he took over at one point in time and became their guy. Like, Zach Calzada technically started the season at quarterback, but he took over in game 3 and started the rest of the year. So I don't really count him, although it's the first time going into a season as a starter. Big Ten, let's see, no, he's not a first-time starter. There's a kid at Iowa that I've watched a little bit, and I don't know who's going to win the job, but they've got a kid, and I can't remember his name. I think it might be is it Neil Brown? Let me go look real quick. But Iowa has a kid that's 5'11", and I was like, they're not about to start a 5'11" quarterback. So I went and watched the kid a little bit, some high school tapes, and I'm like, yo, Hank Brown. No, it's not Hank Brown. It's the other one. Hold on a second. Yeah, Jeremy Hicklinski is the kid. If he wins the job, I like that kid. I haven't seen a whole lot of Hank Brown, the big kid that's battling for that job, but that little guy can make some plays. He might be a lot like Mark Gronowski, which again is not like a, I don't know if anyone at Iowa can kill it, but I'd just be curious to see that kid play. Looking through here, Penn State, no, they don't have a new quarterback. Is there anybody
Maybe
in the SEC? First-time
maybe
starters?
depending on if you would count this or not, because he played a little bit last year. But Matt Zollers at Missouri is one that I'd keep my eye on too if he wins the job.
I'd kind of count him. I think I'd kind of count him, Trev, because he was never the guy. He just took over and filled in for someone that was injured.
Yeah.
He did play, but I don't know that he threw for 503 yards. I don't know that I'd count that as like, oh, he's got starter minutes now under his belt. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know that I'd say that.
Sure.
So yeah, I think that's a good one. And he's a talented kid. We'll see how quickly he adjusts. If George McIntyre wins the starting quarterback job at Tennessee, I liked him coming out of high school. He'd be one. And again, it's one of those, it's like we talked about earlier with Jeff Brom. If you start for Josh Heupel at quarterback, you're going to put up numbers. We'll see how good of a job you do. So those would be some ones, Trev, off the top of my head that I point to as guys that I think have first-year starters that have a chance to kill it this year. But Philo's one that I really like a lot. The kid at Louisville is one that I really like a lot. Zollers is one, Trev. I think if he can win that job, because they did go out and get some guys. They wanted to create some competition, which I like. And then Minchie. Those are some ones that I really like. That's a good one. Yep.
From Brandon Gilbert, why was Kyle Whittingham run out of Utah?
I don't know that I'd say he was run out. They had named Morgan Scalley as the coach in waiting for a while. And I think it got to the point where it's like, when do we want to make the move? And it doesn't seem like Coach Whittingham was ready to walk away from coaching. And that's why it can be dangerous with coaches in waiting. Because if you're the coach in waiting for a guy that wants to retire, that's a much harder situation than when I wanted to name Marcus Freeman the coach in waiting, because we all knew it was a matter of time before Brian Kelly was going to leave, because contrary to the lies that he's trying to spin now, we all knew he was out the door sooner rather than later. That was common knowledge to anyone that had a brain and had any kind of sources and wasn't like a shill for Brian Kelly. That was not a question. It was a matter of when, not if. So, yeah, that's kind of, I think it was just, now's a good time to make the move. You got a lot of guys coming back, and you run the risk of losing Coach Scalley. There's no turmoil. And I think they just decided to kind of go that direction. So I don't know that it's run out as much as they felt like now's the time to make the move that we had all agreed was going to happen at some point in time. And the fact that Coach Whittingham just got to a point where he wasn't ready to walk away yet. And everybody else was kind of ready for it. And I think part of it is, I think they felt he had taken Utah as far as he could, and I agree with that.
That's where I'm at. I think that they thought that Kyle Whittingham was tapped out at Utah, and that doesn't mean that he was bad. When you go 11-2, if that's your peak, but we're also talking about a program that didn't make the playoffs in either the 14 playoff or the 12-team playoff under Kyle Whittingham. So I think they just thought that he has gotten them as far as they can get to, and that led into the decision as well.
Yeah. Good question.
From Bobby S., who were your guys in the 27 recruiting class? I remember you loved Joey O'Brien early and Ben Morrison before that. Any favorite players like that in the 27 class we should keep our eye on?
Well, yeah, there's a receiver that Notre Dame is on right now, and I'm going to pull it up right now. I don't think he's ranked very high. It's a kid out of Pennsylvania named Cade Cooper. He goes to Malvern Prep. He's a 3-star by 247 in ESPN. Rivals has him as the number 226 player, number 32 receiver. I really like Cade Cooper in this class. And, obviously some of my guys, like in the spirit of what you're saying, I'm trying to think of some underrated guys. I love Julius Jones Jr. He's an absolute stud, but he's highly ranked. So I don't know if that is really what you're asking for there, Bobby. But Cade Cooper is definitely one that I'm very high on. Jackson Dollar is a tight end. That's my number one tight end on the board. He's highly ranked. So I don't know if he would fit that criteria. But there's another tight end in the class that I really like that I'd like to see them pair with Jackson Dollar if they can land Jackson Dollar. It's this kid out of Tennessee named Malik Howard. I really like Malik Howard. Those are two offensive players that I am quite high on, Trevor, that aren't also highly ranked guys. Defensively, I'm a big fan of Abraham Cisse. I think he's an absolute stud. But again, he's another highly ranked guy. I don't know if you've had a chance at all to see Aiden O'Neal, the kid from Don Bosco in Jersey. He's a really good player. I like him. Trev, you and I watched a DN that we really liked. He's raw. He's got some tools. Ryan Jackson, kid from Maryland, who's got some tools. This is a really good DN class nationally, where there's a lot of those like kind of under the radar type of kids. Ryan Jackson's 6'3", 6'4", 210, 215, like real skinny kid. But you're like, dude, when he gets a year or two in the weight room somewhere, he reminded me a lot of like Julian Aguilar in high school, Trev, where you're like, this kid's gonna need some time to put some weight on, but he's got some tools. That's another really under the radar kid that I like a lot in the class. At defensive tackle, they're not really in on any of those guys for me. Montana Toalolo from Modern Day is a guy that I really like. I don't know that I think he's like a Benjamin Morrison type sleeper, Joey O'Brien type sleeper, who I thought were studs. He's like a Donovan Heinisch, Kurt Heinisch, maybe slightly above those guys type of player that you just really like. But the guy that I think is very underrated that I'm a big fan of in the 27 class of D tackle is Braden Parks. I think he's vastly underrated, but he's still in top 200. So it's not like I got to update my offer list because Ty Ashley committed to Kentucky. Linebacker, I don't really have anybody that I'm like in love with that people don't already know about in the class. I've been super high on Gavin Williams from the beginning at safety. He's been one of my favorite safeties from day one. I'm not sure where Gavin is ranked. I'm pulling that up right now. Give me a second to look that up. But he's a kid he's actually ranked okay. 247 ranks him number 87. Rivals 0-3 ranks him at 208. ESPN ranks him at 243. I think this is one where I think 247 has it nailed. Now, if he ends up coming to Notre Dame, he's going to drop way lower than 86. But on 247, but he's a kid that I'm a big fan on. I think he's a top 100 player. So I think 247's got this one right. The other two got him way too low. I think Notre Dame's a player there. I don't know if they're going to get him or not, but I'm really high on Gavin Williams. So those are some of my favorite players in the class so far that Notre Dame is on Bobby that I really like. Most of them are underrated guys with a lot of upside. The kid from Fort Wayne's very interesting, Trev, because when I watch him, it's one of those things. I'm going to try to pronounce his name. It's where's he at here? Because I need to like read it to be able to actually sound it out. But it's Afanyi Emadobi, kid from Northrop and Fort Wayne. He's super raw. And it limits his ceiling right now for me. Like, I don't see an elite ceiling right now because he's so raw and he's got a long way to go. But you can also see what Notre Dame likes in him, right? It's a questionable offer because he is so raw, but he's one of those guys where, like, if he's your number 3 defensive end, you absolutely take a chance on him because he's one of those guys that may never play a meaningful down of football. He's that raw. But he's also a guy that if the light goes on, he's Adi Takumba Ogundiji. That's how I felt about Adi coming out of high school. Like, I didn't see a super high ceiling for Adi as a junior. But I was like, look, dude, you've already got Khalid Kareem. You've got Julian Aguilar. You're still trying to flip Dalen Hayes. Like if you get those guys and you add Adi to it, great, because he may never pan out. But if he does, he's an NFL football player. And that's kind of how I see Emadobi right now. Is like, I just don't see the super high upside that I see with Zyron Forstall and Abraham Cisse and those type of guys. I just don't see it right now because he's so raw. But you also see the flashes of what the Notre Dame coaching staff sees. 6'3", 6'4", long arms, super explosive, no clue where he's going or what he's doing. But you see that burst and you're like, dude, okay, let me see what he does the senior year, because by his senior year, I had, Adetokunbo had moved up where he was now, borderline 4-star with 4.5-star upside. He was a guy that I liked when Notre Dame flipped him, but it was like, he needs to be your number 3 tight D end in the class, not your number 2 or your number 1. He's a player that I wouldn't say he's one of my guys, because, again, I just don't see the upside yet, but it's one of those intriguing guys that I will definitely be paying attention to as a senior, but I can see what the Notre Dame staff likes about him. But, yeah, those other guys are Cade Cooper, Malik Howard, Aiden O'Neal, Ryan Jackson, Braden Parks, and what's the other? Gavin Williams. Are those the main ones we talked about? Those are guys that I'm very high on that are not ranked super high. The other guys that I love are guys that are ranked high. I mean, obviously, I love David Fuller-Runshoe. I mean, he's a stud. I love Julius Jones Jr., love Quentin Burrell. Those guys are all – but those guys are already ready. Here's a kid that they recently offered, Trev, and he's intriguing to me, and I don't know if you've had a chance to watch him yet, because I haven't told you to watch him yet, but they offered a kid from Texas named Brennan Lacey like a week or two ago. He intrigues me because he is fast and explosive, but he just didn't – he only had like 50-some carries for like 500 yards last year. He looks like right now he's a bit more of like a track guy. He intrigues me a bunch. Somebody said Fakatu. I don't count him because I love Marcus Fakatu, but he's already highly ranked. So he's not really what I think Bobby was looking for here. So those would be mine. Yeah. And correct, Gideon. We ain't even talking about how much Coach loved Jaden Osbury. You are correct. I was very high. That was my guy in that class. But yeah, good question.
Getting into part 2 of the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. We got the Friday Free-For-All Mailbag going on, and getting us kicked off here in part 2, we have
Vince Strobridge. We had to kick part 2 off with Vince Strobridge, VP at IB. That's so great. Vince is going to love this, by the way. The other Vince, because now that we have 2 Vinces, we have Vince D'Addario, and then now we have Vince Strobridge. So
OG Vince will love this one for sure.
So if I say Vince now and I mess up and say Vince, people can just play it off like, oh, Brian's being funny. He's at least that's my hope that people say. I don't know if people would actually say that about me, but that's my hope. That's what I'm going to tell myself and convince myself of to feel better about myself. Trev, there you go. How about that?
Smart. Apples? Yeah, that's wicked smart. Love that. Big brain. Check out the big brain on Brian. I love that.
Suck up. Excuse me. I had some in my throat right there. Sorry. Let's go to Vince's question.
How many players will exceed 20 receptions and 400 yards?
I'm going to go 4. 20. I'm going to go 6 that are over 20, and I'm going to go 5 that are over 400 by the end of the season. Not regular season. By the end of the season, I think we'll have 6 to 7 over 20, and we'll have 4 to 5 over 400. That's the range for me. Because there'll be some guys like that'll have like 25 catches for 350 yards. You know what I mean? Like that's a good season, but they don't. I think there'll be more guys with 20 catches than guys with 400 yards.
Yeah, I think so too. I guess just one of the tight ends, Greathouse, Faison, Aeneas Williams.
I think one of the Ohio State, at least one of the Ohio State transfers will be over those. Yep, agree.
Yeah. My range is the same as yours.
I could see both Ohio State transfers going over 20 receptions, but I'm saying at least one. And Elijah Burris, I'm telling you guys right now, I'm very curious to see what he does this spring. And Micah Gilbert, those are 2 guys I'm very curious to see. Like we're already kind of writing them off a little bit because they're not the shiny new toys anymore, but I'm very curious to see what they can do this spring as well.
Yeah.
Very curious.
From Sean Stewart, do you create your own playbook in NCAA 26? If so, I've been using the playbook in the flexbone formation rocket toss with Jeremiah Love.
I haven't run that one. Yes, I do make my own. I make my own offensive playbook. I don't play the defense very often in NCAA 26, Trev. I do the one where it's like you can pick the option of playing the offense only. It's because I have limited amount of time to play the game. And so I'm going to play the side of the ball that I enjoy the most. and that's offense. But yes, I do create my own offense. I'm that loser that does that. That is me. Yes. So if anyone else does that and you think I'm calling you a loser, welcome company, because I'm one of you. And I do it to where it says you don't have any more plays. Like that. That's how. There's a limit on how many plays you can put in it, and I use them all up. Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah,
that's impressive. I
probably should be doing other things with my time.
I think I always just end up switching it to Notre Dame's playbook because that's the team that I end up playing with the most, so I know their playbook the best. I can't tell you the last time I played NCAA 26. So I haven't created a playbook, but maybe it's I don't know if I'll have the time to do it when NCAA 27 comes out, but we'll see.
Yep. I have a question that follows up from earlier. Andrew Gilmore says, BD, going back to the 1986 question, what about the Colorado head coach? That would be I always say his name wrong. I always want to say Paul McCartney, but it's actually Bill McCartney. I don't know that at that time that would have made a lot of sense. He became very good, but he was in his first 4 years at Colorado, 2-8-1, 4-7, 4-7, 1-10, and 7-5. He was coming off of his first bowl appearance. It wasn't until 89 that they really turned the corner as a program. I think he was honestly a good, decent man, but I also think his program was a little bit of there were some characters in that Colorado program. I don't know how well he would have fitted Notre Dame at the time, but in 1985, his resume was not one that you could justify bringing him to Notre Dame, in my opinion. I just don't think you could. But he ended up obviously being a great coach and doing a great job there.
From Brandon Gilbert, heard Brian Kelly say he was never going to leave Notre Dame and that it wasn't his goal to win a natty. My question to y'all is he lying or just not telling the truth?
He's lying about one and he's being honest about the other. It's so obvious that his goal was not to win a national championship at Notre Dame. Like this whole notion that I wasn't brought there. Somebody sent me this quote. I wasn't brought there to win a title. I was there to, what did he say? Like
get it back to its former glory.
Yeah. Bull crap. Guys that do that would have left after 2012 or after 2017, bro. Shut up. Like that's not what you were brought to do. You were brought to win a championship. Like you're the coach at Notre Dame. And the fact of the matter is, if you weren't brought to Notre Dame to do that, why was that not your objective? Because then that means you'd have to work harder and take accountability. So I actually think Brian Kelly, that's the one truthful thing he said, that was not basically his goal, because he's a big freaking loser who wasn't willing to do what it takes to win a championship. All this time he's talking about wanting to go somewhere with people that were champions, when in reality he was the problem the whole time. I mean, he basically is confirming everything that I said about him. It's like that scene from Rudy. You just summed up your entire sorry career in one sentence. Like that's why you were not ever going to be a great coach at Notre Dame, because you lowered the standard. The Notre Dame players in 2012 and 2011 and 2015 and 2017 and 2018, they were not what held Notre Dame back. It was that guy that was making the big bucks in the head coach's office. He was the limiting factor. So, yeah, he's being honest about that. The other part we've already talked about, the part about not wanting to leave Notre Dame, that's a flat-out lie. An absolute flat-out lie. And this isn't me saying this. I said this when he was still here. I'm the one that caught all the flack for telling everybody Brian Kelly's not the one that turned around the team in 2016. That was Jack Swarbrick and Chad Klunder, because Brian Kelly was trying to leave Notre Dame after 2016, but nobody would hire him. And I was told that directly by people involved in the situation, and by at least one of the coaches that came, who I won't mention which one it was, told me, he's like, yeah, I didn't talk to Brian Kelly till like the very end of the process. Like Jack Swarbrick is the one that came after me and convinced me to come to Notre Dame. So I've been saying this for a decade. He's a flat out liar, which is why he would always sick his little minions like Brian Polian on me and lie about me and do all that kind of stuff, because he knew that I wasn't going to stand for his bull crap. So the only way that he could say the stupid things he says is if he undermined me. And unfortunately, when he left, he basically showed everyone, see, He wasn't lying. He was being honest. And the reality is if you were going to leave for a job, it ain't LSU. If there was some dream job you were waiting on, it ain't LSU. Shut up. Like, give me a break. He's so full. He's so full of crap. He's such a liar. He really is. You want to say anything about that, Trev, before we move on to the next question? Because I don't want to rant too much today on Brian Kelly. I've spent enough on that loser.
It's just really sad knowing how much top-level NFL talent was wasted under that guy.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing that at the start of every season, his goal wasn't to win at all. I think that's such a loser's mentality. Like if you are any sort of athlete or any sort of coach or any sort of competitor, getting into something and not wanting to achieve it at its highest level, whether it's attainable or not. Like I'm sure the head coach at Rutgers doesn't go into every players meeting and say, look, guys, are we going to win the national championship this year? No. But let's just try our best and see what happens.
Yeah.
Knowing that you did that at a place like Notre Dame, that's so Bush League.
Mm-hmm.
But
also so very Brian Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
So very Brian Kelly.
That's just abysmal.
Yeah. What a pathetic loser. Good Lord. Oh my gosh. Anyway, go ahead.
From PJC, if 2018 Clemson played 2019 LSU, how close do you think the game would be, and what would the record be if they played 10 times?
I think it'd be a very close game. Very close game. I mean, look, Clemson gave LSU a game for about a half in 2019, and that was without like the majority of the defense that played in that game. The reason that I don't know that they would have won the game is because their offense struggled to score against LSU's defense, and it was pretty much the same offense. It was still Travis Etienne. It was still T. Higgins, and it was still Justin. Oh goodness gracious, Justin Ross. It was mostly the same, most of the same offensive line. Like it was the same offense, and they struggled a little bit. I think that defense would have done a little bit of a better job. As much as I love AJ Terrell and Trayvon Mullen, though, they would have eventually got by the LSU receivers, in my opinion, in that game. Because those two would have been good, but there were some safety matchups in that game that they would have been able to take advantage of in some of the ways that they moved personnel around. So I think ultimately LSU would have won that job. That's why whenever we talk about LSU being matched up against a great team, I always talk about 2001 Miami. I think the only team of the last 20 years that could have given LSU a game and let's say played 10 times, I think maybe win 4 of them, LSU wins 6, maybe 3 or 4 of them, would be that 2018 Clemson team. Their defense was that good. I just don't know that their offense with a true freshman quarterback. I mean, they struggled with Notre Dame for a while. I don't know that they would have been able to do it, but like that's the one team that I think could. That and the 2013 Florida State team are the two teams that I think could have given LSU legit problems. And big reason why is their D lines were legit, and they both had really good quarterbacks. Those would be my two, Trev. But
yeah, I think those are good picks. Yeah, I mean, I still think LSU would have won just because that offense was geared in a way to where if they had to score 60 points to win a game, they would just score 60 points to win a game. I mean, that's just how they were. The biggest difference would have been the defensive line for Clemson from 18 to 19. Like if they still would have had Dexter Lawrence and Christian Wilkins and guys like that, I think that could have made a difference. But I mean, the back end of their defense was still relatively the same. Like they still had AJ Terrell, they still had Isaiah Simmons, they still had Tanner Muse. I mean, Jamar Chase had one of the best games of his collegiate career, and it was on AJ Terrell in the national championship game. And AJ Terrell was a year older than what he would have been in 2018. So I would still give it to LSU 2019. I think it still would have been closer. I don't think the game would have been over with by the end of the third, but I think it's still LSU.
Yep, I think it would have been like a 35-27 game, something like that. But and that's a great point you bring up, and that was kind of what I was saying. Is like the corners would have got because their best corner was still there. But you look at the difference in stats for Clemson in 2018 versus 2019. They still had Isaiah Simmons, but Clellan Ferrell was gone, Christian Wilkins was gone, Austin Bryant was gone, Dexter Lawrence was gone, and Xavier Thomas got hurt that year, and he wasn't as good at in coming out of the injury as he was before the injury, in my opinion. So I think that would have limited him a little bit too. It's the D line is absolutely correct. You're correct, Trev. That's the big difference. They just wouldn't have been able to stop that offense for 4 quarters. Wouldn't have.
From Black Irish 864, aka our guy Christopher Galloway, Brian, I consider myself an educated old offensive lineman, but I'm confused about how we determine who's a defensive tackle and who's a nose tackle. The defensive tackle group's average weight is 309 and the nose tackle is 280.
Well, Christopher, I think the big thing, number one, I think Notre Dame is trying to get to a point where the nose tackle is a bigger guy. That's why recently they've recruited Sean Sevillano, Davion Dixon, Tiki Hola. That's why they went out and got Tion Gray. But the way that they ran the defense before, they weren't asking the nose tackle to be a guy that was eating up blocks. They actually wanted the three technique to do more of that. They wanted the 3 technique to be the guy with the length, the size that could really be a force, getting a push and getting a penetration. The nose tackle, it was more about leverage and quickness. And that's why it was Howard Cross and Donovan Heinisch the last couple of years. But I think you did start to see that change with Chris Ash, where you saw Jason Onye playing nose and Jared Dawson playing the 3 technique, as the starters last year. And I think that's kind of the direction he wants to go. I will say this. I don't think those designations matter as much under Chris Ash as they did under Al Golden. I think if you actually if you break down Notre Dame's film, what you'll find is there's one guy who's clearly primarily the nose, but they'll move him. So like what Notre Dame doesn't do is, let's say a team flips strength. So let's say you're going with an underfront. So in an underfront, you're going to have your nose to the strength of the formation. If they change strength offensively, you won't see them flip. You'll just see them bump. The 3 technique the nose will bump out to 3 technique. The 3 technique will then bump, the D tackle will then bump into the nose, and they're fine. You have to play both. So it's a little bit more interchangeable now than it was before. But I think under Al Golden, it was meant to be, it's leverage, it's quickness, it's that was more of what the nose did, and it was the 3 technique. Because I'd ask him, I'd say like, oh, I remember having a conversation with Coach Wash one time and was asking about, Gabriel Rubio is going to play nose when he comes. But he's like, no, he's going to play 3 technique. And then he explained and I'm like, oh, okay, so basically you treat the 3 technique in some ways like you treat the nose. And the nose is the penetrator kind of thing. That was kind of what Al Golden was wanting to do. I think that's a little bit changed. I think they kind of want that on both positions now. I think they would like to have a, long, guy that can compete, can make plays, can be physical, but also can penetrate at both spots now. And that's why I think Tion Gray was a guy. Like, they liked Tion Gray a lot more than they liked the kid from Wake Forest. Now, that doesn't mean that they passed on the kid from Wake Forest because Tion was going in the, he wasn't in the portal yet. And I don't know that at that time they necessarily knew for sure he was going to jump in the portal. But I was told before he jumped in that if he jumped in, there'd be interest from Notre Dame. I mean, because agents start to leak that stuff of, hey, my guy's thinking of jumping in, would there be some interest? And I think Notre Dame had some interest in him, a lot more than they did the kid from Wake Forest. And I think a big reason for that is twofold. Number one is I think Tion is a guy that can play the nose, but he's an athletic, bigger guy. That's why of all the Oregon D linemen that jumped in the portal, he's the one they went after because he's the most big athlete of the group. Some of the other guys are like smaller athletes, and then the other guys are like big, and they're a little bit more pure nose tackles. Where Tion actually has some penetration ability. He's actually a pretty good athlete for his size. Oregon didn't ask him to do that. And I believe that's one of the reasons Tion picked Notre Dame is because it gives him a chance to be more of a playmaker. So I think they'd prefer to have a little bit of that at Notre Dame at both spots. But fortunately, they got they got an undersized guy in Francis Brew. I don't know if he's going to play nose or 3. I think 3, but he's not your typical 280 pounder. He's incredibly strong. Incredibly strong. Yep.
Yeah, agreed.
Yep. Good questions. You guys are bringing it today. Really bringing it today. So really appreciate you guys that. Let me get somebody who we haven't got to yet. Here we go. Adam Garcia.
If Brian Kelly never left, do you think he would have been fired? And how would the last 4 years have gone?
Do I think he would have got fired? Possibly. The last year he was here, there was a lot more tension between him and Jack Swarbrick. And I think Jack was starting to get sick of the PR game that Brian Kelly was playing behind the scenes. I think he was tired of it. Would he have been fired? I don't know. Would he have been advised to seek employment elsewhere? Probably, if he didn't get fired. But I don't know how far those conversations went because Jack knew that Brian was trying to leave. Jack's not an idiot. Brian Kelly always thinks he's the smartest guy in the room. Jack knew exactly what Brian Kelly was doing, which is why Jack finally had the leverage in 2021 to call his bluff, because he had this guy running the defense named Marcus Freeman, and he also knew there were some outside candidates that would be legit options. There was obviously Luke Fickell. You had Matt Campbell. Like, you had legit options if you wanted to move on. But as I've said all along, Marcus Freeman is the one that he saw as the future. I just felt like Brian Kelly leaving in 2021 was maybe a year sooner than Jack anticipated. And that's why I think there was a slight hesitation from Jack Swarbrick. But as I told people all along, unless Marcus Freeman completely blew the interview and just looked woefully unprepared to be the head coach, I really think that's the direction that Jack Swarbrick wanted to go. I truly believe that Jack Swarbrick saw something in Marcus Freeman when he interviewed him for the D coordinator job, and then watched how he interacted with players. Listen to how, players, as we saw, loved Marcus Freeman when he was the D coordinator. And this is a group of guys who also played under Clark Lee, who they had a great amount of respect for. So I think there were some similarities in there. Like, hey, this isn't just a D coordinator that's out there calling plays. Like, Chris Ash is just a D coordinator. Have you ever heard him mention with a recruit outside of in passing? Do you ever hear anything about how the great job he's doing in recruiting or where he takes over this position group? No, he's the D coordinator. The impact he's having on people. No, he's the D coordinator. Where Marcus Freeman, you saw a lot of those things. Like, dude, that's head coaching material right there. And Clark Lee had that at Notre Dame. Mike Elko had that at Notre Dame. Like, you could see that these guys are eventually going to be head football coaches. It was very obvious to see those things when Marcus Freeman got hired. And so Jack finally had enough leverage to say, well, okay, and I got enough options over here. I got people I can turn to, that I don't have to put up with your crap anymore. And that's why he called his bluff when Kelly was begging for another pay raise in 2021. He was like, no, you're not getting another pay raise. And that's why Brian Kelly went on his media, frontal assault on trying to convince everyone how bad his 21 team was so he could make himself look better. How would the last 4 years have gone? It would have looked a lot like 21 and 20 and 19. It would have been Notre Dame wins 10 games a year, probably would have had a playoff appearance, would have maybe won the first round game. Maybe they're a 5 seed, 6 seed, and they would have beat somebody at home and then got destroyed. So basically the Georgia game would have been flipped. It'd have been like a 23-10 loss instead of a 23-10 win. Stuff like that. That's what Brian Kelly would have done if he was still the head coach. It would have looked exactly like it did before he left. Good, but not championship level. Because, Trev, as he said, my goal wasn't to win the championship.
Yeah, I'm with you. Would he have been fired? I have no idea. I can tell you exactly how the last 4 years have gone down to their schedule. They still would have lost to Ohio State on the road, but it wouldn't have been 21-10, and they would not have had a 10-7 lead at one point in that game. They probably would have beaten Marshall, but they would have added a loss to one of BYU, Syracuse, or Clemson. Still would have lost to USC. Would have lost to North Carolina in the Gator Bowl. I mean, in
2023, do you think they would have beat Ohio State but then lost to Duke? I think they would have. I don't think Brian Kelly makes the mistakes that they made in 2023 to lose that game, but I don't think he also does what's needed to go win that Duke game the next week. That's my thoughts.
Agreed. And I also don't think that they beat USC as soundly either. It would have gone like every other USC game under Brian Kelly. It would have been a slugfest. They probably would have jumped out to him. Yep.
Yeah, outside of one.
Yep. Probably would have had
because there was years they jumped over USC and then let you remember 2015 they jumped all over USC and then let them back in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's what I was waiting to happen in 2017. I mean, honestly, like just track record wise, I was just sitting waiting,
Well,
and they were beating the brakes out of him. I was like, all right, at some point going like leaving the third quarter, it's going to be 21-18 or 21-17, just waiting for it.
that was the Harry Hiestand effect with Quentin Nelson and I mean, that offensive line was not going to let that happen. Yeah. And they finally had a real defensive coordinator too, so that helps.
24, they still would have won 11-1, but they would have lost to Texas A&M in the season opener, but probably beat Northern Illinois 50-0, just like normal.
Mm-hmm.
Would have made the playoffs. Let's say it plays out the same. They would have beaten Indiana at home. Would not have been as convincingly because it's a big stage and Brian Kelly coaches not to get beat. Then they would have gotten beat by double digits against Georgia.
Yep. 100%. Trev, I'll ask this one because this is more of a you question. Because I don't watch as much NFL. Irish Guy 99 says, what would be the best spot for Jadarian Price? The Broncos, Seahawks, or Vikings?
Between the two or between the three, I'd probably say one of the Seahawks or the Vikings. Sean Payton has been very open to just rotating his running backs kind of without rhyme or reason since he's been in Denver. Jadarian would have kind of just been another member of the rotation. I think with the Seahawks, I would be very interested to see what he could do in that offense with Sam Darnold and JSN, especially now that Kenneth Walker is gone and Zach Charbonnet is still working his way back. So I think that would be interesting. And then I'm always interested to see what a Kevin O'Connell offense can be. I mean, now they have one of Kyler Murray or J.J. McCarthy will be their starter. You can never count out the fact that they still have Justin Jefferson. I think that'd be a good fit as well, because I think their running backs right now are Aaron Jones, who's I think either 30 or over 30, and then the Mason guy, I think Jordan Mason might be his name. He was like an old backup running back for the 49ers, I think. But he's okay. But Jadarian would come in and most likely be one of probably the most talented running back on any of those three teams, I would say.
Yes. I don't know where he's going to go. I don't know what system he's going to fit in because I don't know what systems those guys run. I tell you guys all the time, I don't watch NFL, but I'll tell you this. I've seen a lot of college running backs that have gone on to be really good NFL players. And I know what an NFL running back looks like. And to me, Jadarian Price is absolutely a starting NFL caliber player. Yeah. The one thing he's got to work on, and more people talk about pass game, there's two things he's got to work on. If you throw the ball to Jadarian Price, he's going to be fine. Two areas you got to work on. Pass pro, that's a legit concern. He's got to hold on to the football. The fumbling issues, that's the big one for me. It's a technical thing. It's not a lack of strength. It's just, dude, when you're in a pile, protect the football better. Get it up here. Stop having it down here. And those are things that he'll have to work on. But like the vision, the cutting ability, the athleticism, the explosiveness, the ability to grind out the tough yards when he needs to, the ability to make people miss, it's all there. It's all there. We have not seen this one in a while. Lord Dern's Jurassic Park Shorts. Welcome back to the show. We haven't seen you post in a while. It says, what is your most anticipated spring matchup? This is offense versus defense. Mine would be Gerby Lambert versus Bryce Young. What say you, Trevor?
Oh gosh, I mean, there's a couple that I got in mind. I mean, I think Anthony Knapp versus Francis Brew could be a nasty one-on-one.
Oh, that's going to be a really good one. I didn't even think about that. That's two undersized guys that are really athletic and powerful. That's going to be a good one.
Yeah, Anthony Knapp versus Francis Brew head up could be really fun to watch. Will Black and Boubacar could be two just really athletic guys for their positions going at it. Pick any one of them from the receiving core in the DB room. I mean, honestly.
Leonard Moore against the two Ohio State kids is one I'm very looking forward to watching.
Yeah.
That's going to be the gauge on how good those kids are. Look, if Quincy Porter if they play him in the boundary, he's going to be like, okay, now I'm really glad I came to Notre Dame. I just came here because I wanted to be the guy and didn't want to sit behind Jeremiah Smith for a year, blah, 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 blah. I want to play with CJ Carr. Okay, fine. He's going to realize the best thing that happened to me was having to go up against Leonard Moore every day in practice. I mean, Trev, I remember being at practice in 2018 and just watching Miles Boykin and Chase Claypool just destroy Julian Love in practice like every day. It's just like every day because they just throw back shoulders to those big monsters. And there was nothing 5'10 and a half Julian Love could do about it. Like nothing. And so, but what did it do? It made Julian so much better because he had to chase around Miles Boykin and Chase Claypool and Equanimous St. Brown for the first couple of years of his career. So, I think that's going to end up being a great thing for Quincy Porter it's kind of the opposite of what I was talking about with the receivers. It's having to go against Leonard Moore every day. By the time he gets to games on Saturday, he's going to be like, dude, this is nothing. Like, man, this is nothing compared to what I've had to deal with every day in practice. There's a couple in the chat, Indy Milton fan, Rodney Dunham and Grace McHugh. I like that one. Andrew Gilmore, what about Gray? Nickel against Great House. That'll be a really good one. Shaquille Oatmeal said, what about Francis Brew and Charles Jagasol? We won't see that one in the spring, though. I don't know that Jagasol is going to play in the spring. I have no idea. So that will be an interesting one. I think the Brew Knapp one is the one that really intrigues me. It really intrigues me. That's going to be a fascinating one. But just watching the Ohio State receivers and their matchups against Leonard Moore is going to be very, very outstanding. I am looking forward to seeing DJ McKinney against Faison and Mylan Graham and Greathouse, but we won't get to see that till the fall. So that's one. And look, whoever against Jaden Sanders, I'm very intrigued to see what Jaden Sanders is. So that's another one that I'm looking forward to. And I want to see, Gray against Greathouse is interesting. I want to see Dallas Golden against Jaden Greathouse. I want to see what kind of growth Dallas has made this offseason too. So that's another one. So it's a lot of really fun matchups. Unfortunately, we're not going to get to see a whole lot of them. But they'll be happening nonetheless, and I'm looking forward to seeing them and hearing about them.
Yeah, as am I. From Irish Fan 88, happy Friday, boys. Did you see Brian Kelly's comments about never wanting to leave Notre Dame? He is such a joke. His comment about tearing down the apartment to build, quote, his dream home was also so tone deaf.
We obviously already talked about that, but Irish Fan had gotten that chat in a lot earlier, and I wanted to bring that up, and you are absolutely correct. You are spot on.
From Mark M., who left the cupboard more empty, Charlie Weiss or Brian Kelly?
So I'm gonna change the way this question is asked in order to answer it effectively. And I understand the spirit of, but let me rephrase the question a bit. Who left the cupboard less full? I think that's because neither coach left it bare. I think it would be disingenuous for me to say that Brian Kelly left the cupboard bare for Marcus Freeman. I think that would be me making an emotional response that's not based in truth. And I don't want to do that. And even as much as I dislike him, I will say this. Who left it less full? Brian Kelly left it less full. Charlie Weiss is not a good head football coach. And that's why he didn't succeed at Notre Dame. That's why he didn't succeed at Kansas. But the one thing Charlie Weiss could do is recruit. And when you think about who was on that 2010 team and the 2011 and 2012 team, with the exception of Kavari Russell, Stephon Tuitt, a couple other guys, the vast majority of the studs on the 2012 team were guys that were recruited before Brian Kelly showed up. The one exception is Lewis Nix because he wasn't recruited by either staff. He was recruited by Tony Alford in between the two coaching staffs. But like Zach Martin was a Charlie recruit, Manti, Harrison Smith, Michael Floyd, Tyler Eifert, Sierra Wood, Theo Riddick, all Tommy Reese, all those guys. Everett Golson's the other one that was recruited by Brian Kelly. The vast majority of those guys were recruited by Charlie Weiss. Darius Fleming, he left him. Ian Williams, he left him a very talented roster. It was one that had some holes in it. So did Brian Kelly's. When I look at what Marcus Freeman inherited, much worse situation in the trenches than what Brian Kelly inherited, in my opinion. You had an offensive line that was in a hot mess in 2021. Hot mess. Your defensive line was very thin early on, which is why they had to go to the portal and get guys like Chris Smith and guys like that. Your cornerback room was shaky. And the talent you did have in the secondary were guys that were converted offensive players, and Benjamin Morrison, who, by the way, did not get offered until Marcus Freeman showed up he got offered in 2021 after Freeman got hired. So that's true for Josh Burnham. That's true for Junior Tuihalamaka. A lot of the guys that they ended up getting in that 22 class, Jalen Sneed, that became the primary impact players in that class, were not offered until Marcus Freeman was hired as the defensive coordinator. So they probably wouldn't have been on the board beforehand. So I think that Brian Kelly walked into a better situation roster-wise than what Marcus Freeman walked into. And you can say, well, he walked into not a great quarterback situation, Brian Kelly. Nonsense. If you screwed up Dane Chris, you ruined Dane Chris, a 6'5" rocket-armed right, quarterback. You ruined him. That wasn't a Charlie Weiss problem. Whereas Marcus Freeman walked into a quarterback room that had Tyler Buckner, who was injured, Drew Pine, and Steve Angeli. So, Brian Kelly left it less full. The advantage that Marcus Freeman had over Brian Kelly is Marcus Freeman walked into a better overall program in areas that didn't have a whole lot to do with Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly wasn't the driver of the indoor facility, the Crossroads project, the new turf field, things like that. I'm sure he had some level of input of like, would you like this? Hey, Brian, would you like an indoor facility? Yeah, I would. Okay, let me go get it done. That kind of thing. Like maybe some of this, hey, we need this in there or whatever. But like that was Jack. Jack did that. The board did that. The fund rate, the people in the development office that raised the money for that, they're the ones that drove that, not Brian Kelly. That was ultimately going to happen no matter who the head coach was, because again, that was a Jack Swarbrick objective, was to modernize the facilities at Notre Dame. So that's where Marcus Freeman had a big advantage, was that, not from a roster standpoint. And I know a lot of people said, oh, Charlie Weiss left the covered bear. No, he didn't. Do you want me to start naming off look, Notre Dame's probably going to have 2 Hall of Famers, NFL Hall of Famers from that 2011, 2012 teams, right? Harrison Smith and Zach Martin, both Brian Kelly guys, and Brian Kelly inherited both guys. Notre Dame's all-time leading receiver played under Brian Kelly. Okay, again, recruited by and coached for 2 years by Charlie Weiss. He'll have a college football Hall of Famer that played for him in 2012, Manti Te'o, again, recruited by Charlie Weiss, played in 2009 under Charlie Weiss. So this notion that, oh, man, Brian Kelly walked into a bad situation, nonsense. He left you something pretty good. 8-5 is a joke for you to do in those first 2 years. Absolute joke. He didn't leave you a roster that couldn't beat Tulsa. You couldn't beat Tulsa as a head football coach. Marcus Freeman did not walk into a bad situation. I'm not going to sit and act like Marcus Freeman walked into a terrible situation. No, he had a good situation, but there were more holes, in my opinion, on that roster than there were the 2010 roster. The holes in 2010 were about Brian Kelly and the coaching staff that he put together. That he thought, oh, yeah, it makes total sense to bring in Charlie Molnar as my offensive coordinator, who doesn't know how to coach himself out of a wet paper bag. So, yeah, that was the problems that Brian Kelly had. Not, I didn't have a good roster.
Yeah, 8-5 with those rosters is atrocious. Did you see what FanDuel's over-under was for Notre Dame for this season?
Yeah, I did. It's pretty good. Aren't they tied for the highest over-under odds?
Them and Texas Tech.
Yeah.
Their over-under for win totals in the regular season is set at 11.5. So it's basically, do we think they go undefeated or not?
Yep.
It's the highest I've seen. It's the highest that it's been under Marcus Freeman. Very interesting.
Yeah.
From Beezer 12 Washing Beard, if Keon Keeley plays a pivotal role in Notre Dame winning the national championship, how do you use his story as a recruiting pitch?
This is why you should have come to Notre Dame in the first place. Like, look at this guy went to Bama. He played for Saban. He played for Kalen DeBoer, and look what happened. And explain why. Why did it happen that way? Because here we're going to truly develop you on and off the field. That's why. That's what we're going to do that's different. That's exactly how I would use it. And then then there's the football piece, right? Like, hey, how good's our strength conditioning program? How good is our defensive line coach? How good is our defensive, structure, our defensive coordinator, when we could take a guy who couldn't do anything at Bama and we turned him into, into this. Like, that's exactly how you sell it. Exactly how you sell it.
Yeah, knowing Marcus Freeman and that staff, it'll be a lot of delayed gratification. Like, that'll be a big thing when talking about him. And then positioning it to where, but it might not always have to be that delayed. You might not have to go see if the grass is greener somewhere else to then come back and find success. So I think it could be a lot of that. From the history expert, what team would you replace USC with, maintaining the same home and home schedule mid-October at Notre Dame and then away at the end of the year?
Nobody. I don't want that structure. If I'm going to replace USC with a rival or a team, I want to replace a team where we're going to have something more established. Like I want to play. Okay, we like Texas and Oklahoma play basically same week every year. Georgia, Florida kind of play they don't play at the end of the year. They play at a certain time every year. It's not one year, it's middle of the year, the next year it's at the end of the year. I want it to either be at the end of the year or be in the middle of the year. Both. That's what I want. So I wouldn't do it with anybody. Now, with that in mind, what are some teams that I'd like to replace them with? I think I've said this before, and I would kind of like to replace USC with a rival, whoever that might be. I'm not intrigued by the Michigan option, and I know a lot of people are. That's fine if that's the way that you go. It's better than like picking Stanford. But I would, I've said this before, I'd love to have Michigan State back on the schedule. I would love to have Purdue back on the schedule more regularly. I know that's not attractive to some people, and I understand that. But, I think Notre Dame's going to have enough big games on their schedule the next 7, 8, 9 years with Bama, Texas, teams like that I don't think they need to go add another team like that. Give me some consistency. And then there's years where those teams are good, and they give you some good wins. I'd probably go with Michigan State in this instance. Or you could try to form a new rival. I mean, look, one that somebody on the board mentioned the other day, like, why aren't we talking about this as a potential rival? What about Miami? But again, I don't want to do because Miami was what USC was also. They would play when it was at Notre Dame, they would tended to play earlier in the year. And then when it was in Miami, it was a little bit later in the year, a lot of times. But I'd rather that game be late, again, consistent, either middle of the year or end of the year. But Miami is a rival that I would strongly consider. Well, I would be willing to consider that as a replacement for USC. As far, you could sign like a 10-year contract with them. I wouldn't be completely opposed to that. I wouldn't be opposed to that at all.
No, I wouldn't hate that either. I mean, because of what the makeup of their schedule looks like over the next couple of years. And yes, I know they signed the deal with Clemson before the USC game went away, but I mean, you could just slot in the Clemson home and home series over the next 12 years as the replacement for USC and fill in the holes where you need, because their schedule is such over the next couple seasons. I mean, it's going to be tough. So I don't know if you need to go replace it with a USC level of an opponent. I don't know if it has to be Miami. Wouldn't be opposed to it. I'm not afraid to play anybody. And if I'm Notre Dame, I wouldn't be afraid to play anybody. But also do yourself some favors, and in 1 year don't have to play Clemson and Miami and Alabama and Texas and Michigan and Michigan State and
Right. There's putting together a tough schedule, and then there's basically screwing your team over to where you're going to have a tough time being competitive.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
Getting into part 3 of the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. We got the Friday Free-For-All Mailbag. Getting us kicked off here. In part 3, we got Jason Rose. He says, hey, guys, do you think Notre Dame has the most talented roster in college football this year? I think they might. Unreal amount of depth and mix of veterans and youngsters.
I've been on record as saying this before, Jason, and I'll gladly say it again. I absolutely think Notre Dame has the best roster coming back to college football. Is it head and shoulders above everybody else? No, it's not. But I think it's the best. So look, you've got an elite quarterback. No, you don't have a lot of experience at quarterback, at running back, but I don't care about experience at running back. I care about talent. They've got talent. They've got depth of talent. Receiver, sure, there's things to prove at receiver. So is such as true for some of the other teams that are in contention for top rosters. I think Oregon's in the conversation for top roster. They've got questions at receiver too from an experience standpoint. And in the past, Notre Dame had experience and maybe some talent issues compared to top units. I don't think they have a talent issue in 2026. I think they have an experience issue, and can they develop it and use it correctly? Tight end room, again, there's other rooms with more experience, but there aren't a whole lot of rooms that I would say have more talent than what Notre Dame has. There's a couple that have really good tight end rooms, and I think Notre Dame is kind of, it's gone through a little bit of this over the years at tight end, where sometimes it's really good, but sometimes it's not. You think of, man, how that 2020 tight end room with, Michael Mayer and Brock Wright and Tommy Tremble, but there was also years where it was like Tyler Luatua, Nick Wisher. It was a nice tight end, but and it's like, yeah, it wasn't a great room in those years. It was a solid room, but it wasn't a great room. I think this year is going to be a little bit of a dip compared to like the elite level tight ends. I don't know that Cooper Flanagan is that, but I think it's going to send back up very soon when you look at James Flanagan as a redshirt freshman, Ian Premer as a true freshman, and Preston Frizel, guys like that. I think they're in a great position with like Jackson Dollar and Malik Howard in 27 class, where it's ascending back up and it's going to become an elite position group. But even right now, it's without a doubt a top 7 to 8 tight end room in college football. I think they've got a big time D-line room. Yes, there's, as our preview show, there's still questions that have to get answered, but talent is not a problem. I mean, the fact that Chris Burgess right now goes into spring practice, probably is like your 6th or 7th D tackle, says everything you need to know about how deep this defensive tackle room is. Your DNs don't have the same amount of depth, but you could have arguably the best 1-2 punch in the country at defensive end from a talent standpoint. It's in the conversation. You have the best and deepest linebacker room in college football, and I would argue you have the deepest and most talented secondary in the nation. On top of having what I would argue is the number 1 or number 2 quarterback in the country coming back. So I absolutely think they have the best roster in college football. And can you debate it? Sure, you can debate it, but I know the rosters of the other top teams, and no, I don't think their rosters are better.
Yeah, I also think that Notre Dame has the most talented roster in college football. I mean, look, it depends on who you talk to. The two guys sitting on this side of the screen thinks it's Notre Dame. Now, some people only view that as just overall star power. Some people are like, well, they don't have a Jeremiah Smith. It's like, okay, I'm taking Notre Dame's secondary over Ohio State's. I'm taking Notre Dame's linebacking core over Ohio State's. I'm taking their defensive line depth and talent over Ohio State's. I'm taking their offensive line potential over Ohio State's. I'm taking their running back room. That one's a little bit closer. I'm taking their starting quarterback over Ohio State. So it just depends on the school that you want to nitpick. I've also heard, well, they don't have a Colin Simmons. It's like, okay, not yet. They might this year. Production-wise, I think Colin Simmons is the best edge rusher returning in college football, just like I think Jeremiah Smith is the best wide receiver coming back in college football. Notre Dame also has the best cornerback coming back in college football. So we can sit here and play this game.
Jeremiah Smith player on offense,
right?
But they have that guy on defense. Is a great point, Trev. Yes, agree.
Yeah, they have his counter. Right. Yeah, we might not have the best wide receiver in the country. We have the best corner. I mean, it's just the conversation can go both ways. So yes, I think they do.
Yep. Some interesting responses, Trev, to the rivalry thing. Andrew Gilmore said, I think playing Miami every year would be great. The only thing that turns me off a little bit about Miami is I still hate the fact that their home stadium is an NFL stadium that doesn't match the colors of their team. It doesn't feel like you're playing a road game. It's a tough road environment, but it's just different, and I don't love that, but the program makes a lot of sense. Raymond Harton says same thing. I'd take Miami over Michigan. Joe Mark has an interesting comment. Why not just keep BYU? They seem poised to be a top 15. I mentioned this. I wrote an article about this after they scheduled BYU, and I said I'd have no problem making this a long-term rivalry. No problem if that's the direction they want to go. I don't know that I'd view that as a replacement long-term for USC. But, look, I think Notre Dame would be wise to, anytime a team wants to sign a long-term deal, take it. If you can get some scheduling stability over the next 10 years, you got the 12-year deal coming up with Clemson. You've got obviously a deal with Navy. If Stanford wanted to sign a 10-year deal, I'd sign it. If Purdue, Michigan State, Miami, BYU wanted to sign 10-year deals, I'd take them, and get 4 to 5 guaranteed games a year, plus you have the 4 to 5 ACC games a year. Now you've only got to find a couple games a year. Well, for the next 10 years, most of those games are already scheduled. So I'd have no problem playing BYU. And I wrote an article about that. I just like, if you're going to say that's the replacement for USC, I'd say, okay, that I don't love that because I would rather replace USC with a rival. But this would be creating a new rivalry, which has some history to it, and I'd have no problem with. But I'd say do that, but still do this is kind of how I would make that argument. Bill Walsh says Miami adds flexibility because they're ACC. Black Irish Chris says Indiana. I honestly, Trevor, have zero desire to schedule anything long term with Indiana. They're good now, but I just don't see what value that brings to you.
Well, and if you want somebody to be an in-state rival, let it be a program that you have history with, and at that point, let it just be Purdue. Chris, I get where you're coming from because Indiana's fresh off of a national title, and I get that completely. But I do think a lot of their success is going to be determined on how long Curt Cignetti stays there. While he's still there, they're a team that's going to contend for a playoff spot in a championship, I think, pretty regularly. But once he leaves, you're going to get another Curt Cignetti type of coach in there. I don't know if there's another Curt Cignetti in college football right now. So, who knows what the outlook is going to be. I mean, in 2036, I don't know if he's still going to be the coach there. He's going to be in his 70s. So who knows? But I get where you're coming from, though. It's not a crazy thought. From Just Your Ordinary Joe, for both of you, is there a coach in your personal athletic past whose priority on character formation or life lessons was especially memorable? Any anecdotes about that coach?
So, I mean, obviously, you're always impacted, Joe, and I thank you so much for the question, buddy. There's a lot of different coaches that have had an impact on my life, some directly, some not directly. Biggest impact I had, like, as a kid, are the coaches that, like, actually showed, like, they cared, they believed in me. That was a big thing for me. But I unfortunately, I wasn't blessed with a lot of coaches in, like, high school and college, especially college, that I looked at as, like, mentors. Like, I really felt like they were really impacted me in that kind of way. The coach who had the biggest impact on my life is somebody I worked for, and that was Mike Donnelly at Muhlenberg back in 2002. And I was actually planning on going back in 2003. I got a call from Duquesne about interviewing for the receiver's job in the summer, and Coach Donnelly gave me his blessing to go interview for the job because it wasn't a lateral. It was a lateral move position wise, running backs coach to receivers coach. But it was going from D3 to 1AA, and that's why he kind of gave me and it's the only reason I considered it, to be honest with you, because I loved it at Muhlenberg. I really did. I loved living in Allentown. I loved the kids at Muhlenberg. They were awesome kids. They were smart kids. They were hard workers. A lot of Jersey kids, a lot of Philly area kids, just like those blue collar, smart, hardworking kids. I really did love it there. But he was someone who, you talk about like anecdotes. It was really just about him teaching that, like, look, family can be a priority for you and you can still win. But if it's winning plus making the most amount of money possible, then it's harder to do that. He was a defensive coordinator in the Ivy League, and it's a guy that had offers to go coach at higher levels, and he was actually, I believe, the defensive coordinator at Columbia when Marcellus Wiley was there, I believe. But he went to the Division III level because he had two young kids and he wanted to be a dad more than he wanted to be a football coach at a higher level. And now there's coaches that coach at the higher level and they're also great dads. Like, I'm not saying that can't happen, but I'm just saying for him, and the lesson for him was really about, like, look, your family's got to come first. And the other thing that he taught me was, like, if we're not developing these young men to be successful in life, what are we really accomplishing here? Like what are we really doing? If these kids go out and win a bunch of football games and set records, but they're not prepared to go be successful men in life, whether it's as fathers, whether it's as husbands, whether it's as employees or employers, then what are we really doing? And that was very adamant for him. And then the other thing is just kindness. He knew I didn't make a lot of money working for him. He knew that there was limitations there. So he'd do things like this, Trev. There was this sandwich place in town, and I can't remember the name of it. I wish I could remember the name of it. But the sandwiches they had there were called hogs, and they were phenomenal. And he'd say, "Hey, Brian, go get us lunch." All right, cool. I was there. I wasn't a GA. I was an assistant coach, but like I made GA money. I made like I think $3,000. But we also there was a house there that the school owned, and so we didn't have to pay rent and all that other stuff. And we had a meal plan so we could eat on campus and all that. But he's good, and he'd give me like $50 or he'd give me $100 bill, and he'd just keep the change. You know what I mean? But just decency, just being a good person. And that sometimes that meant, hey, Brian, we need to scold you a little bit because of this, or I need to tell you that, you need to do this better or that better. But just when you think about my sense of what truly matters as a coach, number one comes from my dad. My dad raised me, and my mom and dad raised me in a way that was core to my principles. But Mike Donnelly showed me that how it works in this vocation. You know what I mean? And that's why he had such an impact on me, and not just as a coach, but also as a husband, and how I run my business. Like Trev, I think most people that work for me would be willing to say this, but yeah, I'm demanding, but I think I treat guys with respect and give you a lot of freedom, and don't necessarily ask you to do things that I'm not willing to do, but just treat you with respect. And I think respect doesn't mean I can't ask a lot of you, but it just means you matter to me. You're not just someone that I need to do a job, but you matter to me. And I hope that I'm able to be that. But I from my parents, but then also learning that from Mike Donnelly at Muhlenberg was a big thing for me. Big thing for me. So since we're doing Notre Dame stuff, the most trouble I got in for Mike Donnelly, I didn't get most of it was bringing him in and hey, I saw you doing this. Let's maybe work on this. Let's maybe try this. We were playing Gettysburg, and I can't remember. I think it was Gettysburg, and we were killing them. We ended up winning 41-0. We're killing them, and it was 2002, and it was the week that Notre Dame was playing Florida State. And so Trev, flip phone, when flip phones first started having internet on them, it was I had a flip phone and I could check scores, and it was real slow to update. But in the second half of the game, I kept pulling my flip phone out of my pocket to check the score of the Notre Dame Florida State game. Somebody saw me in the stands and called Mike Donnelly and reported it, and he was he scolded me for that. But I was I didn't care because Notre Dame beat Florida State that day in 2002, so I was excited about it. But yeah, that was pretty funny. Little Notre Dame.
That's awesome for you. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, for me, Joe, my quarterback coach my first 2 years of high school, Jeff Miller, who actually Vince knows, they grew up together. So Vince knew him, and he's now the head coach at Brandywine High School. He taught me a lot of valuable lessons, and he taught me what it kind of meant to be a quarterback. And I've kind of taken some of the lessons that he's taught me and applied it to my daily life and how I treat the people in my life. A lot of what he told me is quarterbacks get too much of the credit when you win and too much of the blame when you lose. And so it's kind of about living in the gray. That's something that I talk about a lot on this show, of expectations for players, but it's also kind of how I conduct myself. I'm sure my wife and some of my friends would tell you I have natural leadership qualities, and I think I learned a lot of those under him and what it truly means to be a leader, not just vocal. And it's also about putting in the work that nobody sees, because if you are going to get the credit for something, you got to put in the work to do it. Because naturally, if you're a quarterback, you get a lot of that, and it just comes with the territory. You're the one that the newspapers want to interview, that people want to do interviews with preseason. But if you're not the one leading the charge at workouts or anything like that, so I take that mindset, and it's a lot of being in that's how I feel about leading a household, being a good friend. And so a lot of those were from him. He left after my sophomore year of high school. That was an emotional day, but that's been a lot of it. He was a coach that took the time to go the extra mile for me, because that was his expectation for me. My family didn't have enough money. I didn't get my first car in high school until my senior year. All of my friends were driving by the end of their sophomore years. We would have workouts at 5 a.m. at the school. He'd go out of his way to come pick me up to make sure I could make it to them. So taking the extra mile and doing the extra things for the people that you care about, it's a big lesson that I learned from him as well. So yeah, it's him, and I don't even know if it's overly close. as far as like in my athletic career.
Yep. The only high school coach I had that really had a big impact in my life was a guy named Adam Chayunsky, who was my head coach my junior year of high school. And then he left. He's the guy that I followed down to Florida. I was going to go play for him. He became a D coordinator at University Christian School in Jacksonville, Florida. And I was going to move down there and play for him, but I got ruled ineligible because I wasn't going to live with my parents, even though I was 18. But I did play spring ball down there. So he was a good guy. Yeah, high school coaches have such an important role in developing young men because most won't go play college football. They won't have that Mike Donnelly figure at college. They are the final impact, and I have great respect for guys who value that. So that's good stuff. Real good stuff.
Super chat from Tyler Evans. Appreciate you, man. Is there a team you could see this year in the top 10 end up like Penn State or LSU did last season?
I mean, that's so hard to predict because I would not have even dreamed that Penn State was going to be that way. But LSU, we did feel was that way. Honestly, we did feel that LSU was a team that could potentially falter. So there's a little bit different, but I did not see the worst case scenario for Penn State was they were going to go 9-3. That was, to me, that was worst case scenario. Who could be that team this year? I'm just going to go through ESPN's kind of top 13 teams on their way to early top 25. I don't see Indiana having that big of a drop, like that sort of 7-5 or worse drop off.
No.
I don't think Texas has that kind of drop off. I don't think Notre Dame has that kind of drop off. I don't think Georgia has that kind of drop off, but Georgia could be LSU. They won't be Penn State. I mean, like Penn State went 6-6, but it was worse than that because they played some really bad teams they were able to barely beat later in the year. Oregon, I don't think that's an issue for. Ohio State, I don't see that happening for. Texas Tech, possibly, but I don't see that big of a drop off. I don't see it with Miami. Ole Miss is a team that I could see taking a big step back. Really big step back. That would probably be my pick. And you look right outside the top 10, Texas A&M, BYU, Oklahoma, USC. USC, I think, could have an LSU type of disappointing season because of their schedule, and I just don't have a lot of faith in Lincoln Riley. But those would probably be my schools that I think could potentially have that type of – I'm not predicting it, but they're the ones that I could see that. And Fight and Mike said Penn State is only 500 because they're out of conference schedule, and he's 100% right. Because they played nothing but FCS and G5 teams, and not even good ones at that. You know, they beat Nevada, Florida International, and Villanova. Like, it was not good. Yeah. Their power four wins in the regular season was Michigan State, Nebraska, and Rutgers.
Yeah, Ole Miss is probably the runaway favorite for me. I'm going to always keep my eye on Texas Tech because when a team has just 1 year of being really good, I don't then set the standard of like, well, that's just who they are now. Like, that's what made Indiana's run so impressive to me in 2025 because I was one of those people until proven differently. I thought 24 was kind of a flash in the pan because people weren't seeing them coming. That's what made that run really impressive for me. So Texas Tech going undefeated in the regular season, or did they go? Yeah, undefeated in the regular season, I think.
Texas Tech?
Yeah.
No, they lost Arizona State without.
That's right, because they had. Yeah, no, that's right. But Texas Tech, really, for the better part of the last decade, has been a perennial like 7, 8, 9 win team. The one time they make the playoffs and have an 11-1, 12-1 record going into the playoffs isn't now my. All right, well, they're just going to be that way every single year. So they'd be a team.
Especially with how outclassed they got by Oregon, Trev. Like they got super outclassed by Oregon.
They did. And like you and I have talked about before, it's any team that's predominantly made up through the portal. Now they do have guys coming back, but they had to hit the portal hard again. You just never know how that's going to be. The other team that I'm also thinking about, and I hope that this doesn't happen, is Texas A&M, solely because of their schedule. I think culturally they're fine. I do think that we've seen the best of Marcel Reed at quarterback, but I mean, man, they get on the road against LSU before September's even over. And then they're on the road against Missouri in October. But really from October 24th to the rest of the season, their schedule's pretty nasty. They get on the road against Bama, on the road against South Carolina, home against Tennessee, on the road against Oklahoma, and then home against Texas. That's That's rough.
That's an interesting one too, Trev, because they didn't have a lot of personnel losses everywhere. They had heavy personnel losses at two positions, offensive line and defensive line. That's a big concern that I have about Texas A&M. Very big concern. That's a good one. It's a very good one.
From Chief Brody, a.k.a. Bobo, Notre Dame quarterback with the most drip of all time and Notre Dame quarterback with the least drip of all time. I'm going with Jimmy for the most and Jack Cohn for the least.
Okay, before I answer this question, Trevor, I need you to explain to me what the heck drip is.
It's like looking cool.
Okay.
Like on the field accessories, off like Chief, that would have been my question. Are we talking like on field or off field drip? Because off field, it's like, I mean, probably Riley Leonard. He seems like somebody that would wear like a hoodie and jeans to class every day. I mean, off the field, it'd probably be Jimmy because he showed up to campus in a
He said style is what he
style
said.
on field.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That helps. Yeah, that definitely helps.
Jimmy would be my answer as well. Riley Leonard actually had some of that when you think of like the wristbands and like the verses and all. I mean, he had the towel. He had some. I can't even say the word. I feel like I'm 15, but he had some of that. I'm gonna disagree with you on Jack Cohn. I am, because like I know Jack wasn't super athletic, but I thought Jack played with some swagger. I mean, this is a kid that, you know, you're going down the field for a game-winning touchdown drive. He gets his finger dislocated. He runs to the sideline. They pop that sucker back, and he goes in like 2 plays later and throws a touchdown pass, win the game. You know, and Jack played with some fire. Jack looked stylish out. I mean, he had the towel. You know what I mean? He looked fine. I don't think he was like goofy looking. I think the guy that probably had the least amount of that would probably be, I don't even want to say it because I think people are going to take it wrong. I'd say probably Tommy Reese, as far as just like not having, I mean, Tommy wasn't flashy. Tommy, you know, he wasn't like with a lot of gear, you know, I'd probably say Tommy was the least. I'd go Jimmy or Riley with the most. Brady Quinn, I mean, let's be honest, his guns were part of his style, and everybody saw those. So I'd probably put him a little bit in that one. In my lifetime, Tony Rice had a lot of that too.
I was just about to say, like, from the old games that I've seen, like rocking 2 towels is pretty sick. Yeah. I wouldn't do it, but that's definitely,
you would have if you were a college player in 1988.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, for the most, I think Everett Golson has to be in that conversation too. He had the visor, he had the towel, he had like the 3/4 leggings that were big at that point in time. Notre Dame hasn't really had a quarterback that's rocked like an arm sleeve. That's never, like, CJ wore one against Boise State, but it was in his non-throwing arm. That was pretty cool. Least of all time, probably Tommy, just as far as like on-field drip, like as far as like accessories that you have. Because I agree with you, Jack Cohn had like the swagger about him, but that was more in his play style. Yeah, I'd probably say Tommy Reese. That, or I mean, if we're counting him as a starter, because he did for a little bit in 07, Evan Sharpley was a pretty bland drip guy.
In so many ways. Yes, I agree with that.
Yeah.
That's a great one. Let's go with that one. Vince will appreciate my response to that. Yeah. Yes, Evan Sharpley, without a doubt. Now we can move on from the drip conversation.
From Andre Tonsel, top 10 non-quarterback position players on offense and defense. I think this question could be part of his show.
Whose show? I'm a little confused. Top 10 players, because I don't think it's just the 10 starters, because that doesn't necessarily, in no particular order, because I can't sit there and write it all out and rank it. I'll say top 10 players. Combination of talent plus production experience. I'll go not at quarterback. I'll go Jaden Greathouse, Jordan Faison, Anthony Knapp, Gerby Lambert, Ashton Craig, we'll go James Flanagan, Aeneas Williams. Because I'm trying to also like look at guys with some experience. Whenever he comes back, Charles Jagasol's in that conversation. And then I'll have to put a couple guys who haven't played a bunch in there. I'll go Will Black because he's immensely talented. And I will go Quincy Porter. That'll be my 10. Top
I like
players.
that. Yeah. And are we just going off of like talent slash?
I think it's
production?
talent plus production plus experience. Like, like there's got to be some level of what you've done. And now Quincy Porter hasn't done a whole lot, but he's played more meaningful minutes than like Cam Williams has, for example, who is one of the 10 most talented. There's no question that Cam Williams is one of the 10 most talented players on the team. But I think so is Grayson McHugh, and I'm not going to put him on this list either because he's you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, so that's kind of the way I look at it. There's got to be some level of that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, in no particular order then, I'd probably go Gerby Lambert, Anthony Knapp, Aeneas Williams, Jaden Greathouse, Jordan Faison, one of Quincy Porter or Mylan Graham. Heck, James Flanagan probably has to be in that conversation now for just overall talented. Gosh. Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, like guys like Will Black. Interested to see what Micah Gilbert does. He's been a player that's been mentioned in some of the player interviews of somebody that's been pretty difficult to cover so far this offseason. But again,
who's that?
Micah Gilbert. But again, can he translate the offseason kind of hype into the in-season hype? We'll see. But as far as talent goes, yeah. Caught CJ's first touchdown pass. So,
I mean, and he's been talked about each of the last 2 off seasons as a guy to keep an eye on, and he just can't stay healthy.
I know.
That's the problem there.
Elijah Burris could probably have an argument in this conversation too. But, yeah.
It's good stuff. Good question. Here's another good one.
From Shaquille Oatmeal, how would a prime Charlie Weiss do as offensive coordinator on this 2026 team?
That's a great question because, man, he was really good at Notre Dame as an offensive coordinator, but also his Kansas teams weren't very good, and his Florida team was not very good. Like, and those were obviously both after his time at Notre Dame. Obviously, he went to Florida first, and then I think he went to Kansas after that, right? And his offenses at Kansas were really bad. And I think that's partly because he doesn't know how to build a team. He inherited a bunch of good veteran players at Notre Dame. But I think Charlie Weiss's offense is dependent on having an elite quarterback. And he had 4 really good offenses at Notre Dame and 1 terrible offense at Notre Dame. What was the difference between the 2? Brady Quinn, Jimmy Clausen right in the middle, Evan Sharpley, and freshman injured Jimmy Clausen. John Brantley, I think, was his quarterback at Florida, and then a broken Dane Christ and some other guys at Kansas. Charlie Weiss with CJ Carr would probably be pretty good. Yeah. Is he as good as Mike Lambrock? No. But he'd be pretty good.
Oh, agreed. For the 26th season, I think it'd be special. I think it would be a very good offense. I do think it would be one of those things, though, where somebody, whether it be Freeman or an assistant coach on his staff, might have to have him dial things back a little bit, because what made Charlie Weiss's offense so great when Brady Quinn was running, it was very close to an NFL-style offense. And he had a very experienced veteran quarterback along with a very talented quarterback that had the ability to run it. I think first couple games would have been like, okay, hey, like we kind of have to simplify a little bit, but I think it would have been a good
I think
offense.
Freeman's conversation would have been, hey, bro, I need you to run the ball a little bit more. I think that would have been the big beef. We need you to run the ball a little bit more. It's a good one. I want to try to get to all the ones we haven't got to yet. Then we'll go back to the top and just work through the duplicates.
From Jay Melvin, I was looking back at Bubakar's recruitment. Why were a lot of the major teams not after him outside of Michigan and Notre Dame? There wasn't that many elite programs after a 4-star top 200 to 150 recruit.
That's fair. I think there's a couple reasons why. Number one is injuries. He was not often healthy in high school. He's from Massachusetts, so he's not exactly at a big time program. I think that factored into it as well. And he was raw. I mean, that was a big reason why. I mean, look, I have said this before. Boubacar did not rank very high in my current. So, like, for those who don't know, I do a ranking system, but I have 2 grades. I give you a current grade that's basically kind of where you are now and where you project now on just normal growth and who you are today. And then I have an upside ranking, which is if this guy reaches his full potential, his caliber of play is here. And I've obviously had to adjust it over the years. And Boubacar was not even in the top 6 or 7, I don't think, on the defensive class of the current ranking. But he was my number 1 guy on upside grade. And it was like, look, this kid may never play a meaningful down at Notre Dame, or he may become a first-round draft pick. That was the range with Boubacar when he committed to Notre Dame. The really good coaches kind of could look at the tools and say, dude, he's really good. But remember, there was a lot of people that thought he was going to grow into a D tackle in college. He actually lost weight when he came to Notre Dame. He was a bigger kid. He was like 260 pounds. He streamlined, built a lot of muscle, got rid of some bad weight, and that's why he looks like he does now. But there's a lot of people that thought he could be a D tackle coming out of high school. So I think that factored into it as well. It's like, can he put all that weight on and hold up? And obviously Notre Dame decided to go a different route with him, and it's really paid off.
Yeah, I would say so.
All right, we got one from Aaron Valerio.
Predict the Heisman finalists next year and how many will be quarterbacks.
I think 4 will be the number. So let's go there, Trev. I think 1 will be a receiver. The rest will be quarterbacks. That's where I'm going next year. I think the receiver will be Jeremiah Smith. I think the quarterbacks will be CJ Carr, Dante Moore, and Arch Manning. If there's a 5th, it'll be Julian Sand. But I'm not ready to go to him yet. But I think Jeremiah Smith for sure would be one that I would predict. Although they're going to need some other receivers to step up because early in the season, teams like Texas are going to be like, I dare you to throw to anyone else other than Jeremiah Smith. Like I'm going to make Brandon Ennis or Chris Henry Jr. or some of the transfer from UTEP or whatever. I'm going to make one of those guys beat me. Because remember Texas did that to Ohio State 2 years ago, and Ohio State's offense struggled, and they had Emeka Egbuka and Cardinal Tate on that roster, and they only scored 21 offensive points. One of them was on a screen play with 30 seconds left, where they threw a screen to Travion Henderson. And that's the other thing. They also had Travion Henderson and Quinshad Judkins taking some of the pressure off of Jeremiah Smith. I mean, honestly, they don't lack talent, right? Let's not kid ourselves and act like Ohio State's got mediocre talent. I'm not saying that. But I would argue that their current talent level across the board, starting lineup and 2 deep and rotation guys that'll play, it's not as good as it was 2 years ago. Not even close.
No.
I think Bo Jackson's a good football player. I don't think he's as good as what Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins were in 2024. I definitely don't think their backups are as good as those guys were. Jeremiah Smith will be a better version of himself, but I'm sorry, there's a big drop-off between Emeka Egbuka, Cardinal Tate, and what they are going to put out at receiver. And I like Brandon Ennis, but he's not Emeka. He's not even close to Emeka Egbuka. So I think I don't think they're as talented as they were. I think Julian Sands probably got more physical tools than Will Howard, but he's young, and he got a lot of good, valuable experience this past year. But I don't think their skill talent is what it was 2 years ago. I really don't.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you completely. CJ Carr is still the Heisman favorite on FanDuel to win the award. So here's the hope, and that comes to fruition. But I'm with you. I think it's going to be a quarterback-heavy year. I mean, if you go and look over on FanDuel, the next closest non-quarterback is 7 spots down, and it's Jeremiah Smith. Mm-hmm. All above Jeremiah Smith, you got CJ Carr, Arch Manning, Trinidad Chambliss, Julian Sane, Josh Hoover, Dante Moore, and Darian Mensa are all above Jeremiah
Mensa's
Smith.
a good one. Tom Redger had him, and he said him there too. I could see that. I need to see it first, but he could put up some similar-ish numbers to Cam Ward from 2 years ago for sure.
Oh yeah, well, absolutely. It would not shock me if there was 4 Heisman finalists this year and they were all quarterbacks.
Agree. Trev, who is there any other non-quarterbacks besides Jeremiah Smith on that FanDuel list? I'm very curious about that.
The next closest one is Malachi Toney at plus 3,000 odds. And Malachi Toney is below Marcel Reed, Jade Maeva, Brendan Sorsby, Sam Levitt, and Gunnar Stockton.
Wow. Way better college football player than all those guys, but it's that quarterback bias that goes with the Heisman Trophy.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't see the two top running backs, Kyron Lacey and Ahmed Hardy. I don't see them putting up the kind of numbers and being as dominant as Jeremiah Love was. But I think of the two, I think Ahmed Hardy is going to have the best chance to have those kind of numbers.
Yeah. Well, I had to scroll down pretty far. Kwan Lacey is ahead of Ahmed Hardy they're both tied at 10,000 odds to win the Heisman. Kwan Lacey is currently behind Dylan Raiola to win the Heisman, who is a backup quarterback.
Oh, my goodness.
So
that's funny. That's very funny. Yeah.
do with that what you will.
Yeah. It's crazy. Oh, my goodness.
Super chat from Tyler Evans. Appreciate you, man. What is your Mount Rushmore of uniforms, one each from the NHL, the NBA, the NFL, and the MLB? And it could be from any era.
Well, that's a good one. NHL, I'd probably would. Part of me wants. I would go with the Rangers because you know me, Trev. I'm a big red, white, and blue guy. You know, and I think they're. Which one do they do at home in the NHL? The colors at home or the white at home? Which one? It's colors, right, at home. Isn't it like?
Gosh, I have no
football?
idea.
You guys in the chat let us know, but I think the NHL is kind of like the NFL, where the home team normally wears the colors and the road team. The other one would be if you're going something iconic. I think the Red Wings have, back in the day for a long time had real iconic NHL uniforms. I can at least evaluate that, even though that's about all that I know about hockey. That would be my one for that one, Trev. The other one would be NFL. I mean, I'm kind of biased. I'd have to go with the old school Broncos, the orange, like what they were for most of Elway's career. I think when the Broncos go with their throwbacks, with the baby blue and the orange from back in the day, those are just absolutely gorgeous. I'd have to go there. I think that would be my favorite. I think the most iconic is probably the Cowboys. Would probably be my pick for most iconic. The Patriots in the Brady years had some really sweet uniforms. They really did. Major League Baseball again. There's my favorite team. The 1970s and 80s Cincinnati Reds uniforms were pretty sweet, in my opinion, with the C on it. But if we're talking about iconic Mount Rushmore, you got to go either Yankees or Dodgers. I'd probably go Yankees. The pinstripes, the home pinstripes are pretty sweet, but the Dodgers are also iconic. I mean, the Dodgers go back to they pretty much still have the same uniforms they had when they were in Brooklyn. I mean, just Dodgers, and it hasn't really changed a whole lot. It's been modernized, but it hasn't changed a whole lot. Pick one of those two. And then NBA, there's no other answer other than the Boston Celtics home whites. There's no other answer than that. It's my favorite team, and they're the most iconic team. With all due respect to the Lakers, the Lakers would be number two, and I'd go old school Lakers with the cursive, from the '80s, and yeah, that's probably the direction I would go. Speaking of uniforms, can I say this? I saw a tweet yesterday where the Tennessee Titans showed that their new uniforms for next year. Those are flipping amazing. I love it's the old Oilers uniforms, but Titans. They put a video out yesterday, Trev. You got to check them out. Those would be mine. Those would be mine. Fighting Mike says Blackhawks. That's the Blackhawks have a pretty sweet uniform too. So do the Penguins. Bruins. I think the Boston Bruins, I think have a pretty good one. He says Dodgers, Celtics, Packers. Packers I never really thought of. That's a pretty iconic one as well. That's a good one as well. What say you, Trev?
Yeah, I'll be honest here. All of my answers are just completely biased. Like, I understand the most iconic and that, you could show a non-sports fan of those. They would know what those are. I'm not putting them on my Mount Rushmore. All of mine are just the aesthetics and like what they look like. So NHL, by default, I'm going to go with the Blackhawks because I literally could not tell you what any of the other uniforms look like. Like, And I can't really even tell you what the Blackhawks uniform looked like. I had a buddy growing up, one of my best friends, who was a Blackhawks fan, and he would wear their jersey sometimes, so I know what those look like.
The home reds are pretty sweet looking. I'll give you that. Yeah.
Agreed. The NBA, I'm biased. I also live down here in Indianapolis, but I think the Reggie Miller pinstripe white Pacers uniforms are pretty sick. Big fan of those. I like pinstripes basketball jerseys.
Who's the best coach that Reggie Miller ever had?
I have no idea.
Larry Bird. Come on, man. I set you up for that one. Home run. Here comes the hanging curve, Trev. Come on, man. They took him to the finals.
Buddy. Sorry, buddy. Sorry,
I don't want to hear this. Oh, I was in diapers when that happened. I don't want to hear that, man. I don't want to hear that. Come on. You're from Indy now. You got to learn that stuff. But no, Larry Bird was actually took them to the finals and then also took them to the Eastern Conference Finals and lost to the Bulls, I think, in 7 when he was a coach. He was also won Coach of the Year. I think Larry Bird has won Coach of the Year and Executive of the Year, I believe, and then also obviously league MVP during his career. So actually, let me check that out. I believe that's the case. Let me see. NBA Coach of the Year in 1998, and then NBA Executive of the Year in 2012.
Nice.
On top of being an NBA three straight years as MVP. It's pretty awesome. But anyway, please continue, Trev.
Yeah, I had a
NBA this year, the rest.
Yeah, in college I had a pinstripe white Reggie Miller jersey. The NFL, I'm with you. The most iconic is probably the Dallas Cowboys. My favorite one that's came out, I am, I guess, recently a Cincinnati Bengals fan, and I'm also a sucker for all white. So they're all white, like white Bengal Tiger uniforms are nasty. So
the Redskins home white. The Redskins are and the Cowboys both wore white at home. The Redskins back in the 90s and 80s and 90s, their home uniforms, I think, are in this conversation as well from an aesthetic standpoint.
Yeah.
They probably have my favorite helmets of all time. Those helmets were sweet. Their uniforms back in the day were sweet. But yes, I think the Redskins aesthetically are in that conversation as well.
And then what's the last one? The MLB?
Yes, for you, Major League Baseball. Yep.
Gosh, most iconic. It's probably hard not to just go with
Yankees or Dodgers. The advantage that Dodgers have over the Yankees is they have red, white, and blue in their uniform. I think that, you're a Midwestern guy. Cubs, I think home uniforms back in the day, that their pinstripes are pretty sweet.
Yeah. I like the Cubs recently came out with like a Carolina blue, like a powder blue jersey. That is also sick. So.
There was a time when like everybody had some sort of powder blue uniform. It seemed like the Expos had it. The Cubs would wear it at times. The Phillies had that, powder blue and the maroon. The Royals had it. It seemed like the Cardinals' home uniform or road uniforms were that kind of powder blue with their red. There was a lot of teams that had that. Yeah.
I'd probably also throw the San Francisco 49ers name in the hat for like iconic looking jerseys too. Like the red and the gold.
I would put their helmets in that conversation. I would. They probably have one of my 5 favorite helmets of all time. Obviously the Broncos, the old Broncos, right? The powder blue with the baby blue, whatever, with the D and the horse. I think the Redskins have an iconic helmet. I think the Cowboys have an iconic helmet. And I think the 49ers have one of my favorite helmets. I was never a big fan of the Packers helmet. I just think that's kind of an ugly color of yellow. I think the G is cool looking, but I've never been in love. Maybe it's because we were the Seahawks and we had the same helmets in high school, but I think the Seahawks have a pretty sweet helmet as well. But there's been some other good ones, but yeah, those would be ones. I think the Bengals helmets back in the day were pretty sweet. I don't know what they look like now, but with the stripes across.
Oh, it's the same. It's
the same. Yeah, that's a pretty sweet helmet.
Yeah, the Bengals helmets are dope.
A pretty sweet helmet. Yeah. Browns have the only helmet that's worse than Penn State's, by the
way. Penn State's helmets suck, dude.
Yeah.
They're it's like
they're trash.
It's like if I went to Dick's Sporting Goods and just wanted to get my own Speed Flex to wear around the house. That's what their helmets look like.
Like when they come from, when you're a team and you order them from the company and then you're going to color and paint them and put the logos on, their helmets look like the store-bought putting your stuff on them helmets. And they just were like, yeah, we can't afford to put anything to them, so we're just going to put them out like this. And hey, it kind of worked. We're just going to keep it that way. People kind of like it. So our fans seem to like it. So we're going to just go with it.
Getting into the final part of the Irish Breakdown podcast today, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. We got the Friday Free-For-All Mailbag. We've gotten some awesome questions so far today. You guys really brought it today. Really, really good questions in here. Makes mine and Brian's life a heck of a lot easier. And ready to get things rolling here in the final part today.
Yes, we have a super chat to kick things off with, Trev, from M. Moore.
Okay, who are your top 5 Notre Dame running backs since 2015? Appreciate the super chat, M. Moore.
So the question that I asked him was, does since mean beginning with or since then? Because I've seen that used both. I'm going to include it since 2015, meaning beginning with 2015. That's what I'm going to give my answer. My top 5 Notre Dame running backs are, number 1 is easy. It's Jeremiah Love.
Yep.
I'll go Josh Adams. I will go, Dex, Tony. I'll go, so those two, I'll go Jadarian Price, Kyron Williams, Audric Estime. So Josh Adams, going from time frame. So Josh Adams, 15 and 16 and 17 was pretty good. You look at, Dex had the 1 year, but he didn't even get to 1,000 yards. Tony Jones had a really good year in 19. Kyron had back-to-back thousands. He's in there. Then you had, Audric had 3 really good seasons or 2 really good seasons at Notre Dame. And then Jeremiah and Jadarian in like chronological order. But ranking them 1 to 5, I'd go Jeremiah number 1. I'd go Josh number 2. I'd go Kyron 3 just because he got more opportunities. I'd go Jadarian 4 and Audric 5. I know that Audric had more production than Jadarian, but that's because he got a lot more opportunities. I think Jadarian was a better player than Audric. But if you wanted to go Audric above him just because of numbers, then that's fine. But that would be my order. J. Love, Jeremiah, Josh Adams, Kyron Williams, Jadarian Price, and Audric Estime. That'd be my 5.
Yeah. Order 1 to 5, I'd probably go J. Love at number 1. And honestly, I just don't think you can go with anybody else at number 1. I'm with you there. My number 2 is probably I'll go J. Love, I'll go Kyron, and then I'll probably go Josh Adams, and then I'll go JD, and then I'll go Audric Estime.
Give me your case for Josh being behind Kyron.
He ran behind a better offensive line in 15 and 17 than what Kyron ever had to run behind in 20 or 21.
2020 offensive line was outstanding. 2021 was not. I'll give you that. But his 2020, that was Liam Eichenberg, Aaron Banks, Jarrett Patterson, Tommy Kramer, and Robert Hainsey. That was
it was a good. I don't want to discredit it, but I would take the 15 and the 17 offensive line both over 20.
Josh was also pretty darn good in 2016 behind what wasn't a great offensive line. I think Kyron was very good. I think Kyron gets bonus points from Notre Dame fans because he was an underdog. And I know he got to 1,000 yards, but like his numbers are so significantly behind like a guy like Josh Adams. And your point about the lines he ran behind are completely spot on. But like when I look at Josh's worst year was 5.9 yards per carry. And that was on the 2016 team that went 4-8. Kyron's best year was 5.3. And he was 4.9 the other year. And, 7.1 as a freshman, 6.9 as a sophomore. I think an area where you could say, okay, Kyron was definitely a better pass catcher, without a doubt, and was better getting in the end zone. Josh surprisingly didn't score a lot of touchdowns. He never got to 10. But I think Josh was dynamic. It's crazy that he never got to 10 touchdowns. But he also played on a team with, I think in 2 of his 3 years, if not all 3 of his years, he had a quarterback that rushed for double-digit touchdown numbers. So in his first year, CJ led the team with 11, and then Deshaun had 10. In 2016, Deshaun had 8, and then in 2017, Brandon had sick. What did Brandon have? It was like 15,
16
14
or something.
Yeah, and then Dion had 5, Dexter had 4, Tony had 3. But Kyron was more of the workhorse. He didn't have the depth behind him. He had to kind of carry more of that load. But yeah, I think Kyron was very good. I don't think Kyron's numbers behind that line would have been as good as Josh's numbers as a runner, but we'll never know. There's a big gap between 1 and 2 for me. I think the bigger debate for me is who's 4 and who's 5 between Jadarian and Audric. That would be the bigger debate for me. Like, what would Jadarian's numbers have looked like if he was ever the guy?
I mean, I think, yeah. I mean, my one rationale, not my only one, but I think the biggest rationale that I have for putting JD above Audric is because if JD didn't get hurt, he would have started above Audric in the year that Audric broke out.
It's a great point. It's a great point.
So it's kind of like the coaching staff kind of answered that for us, but we just never got to see it.
Yeah, which is a bummer. Yeah. Yeah. And you know what, though, at the end of the day, we can debate who should be here and who should be there. They were all really good running backs. So was Dex. So was Tony Jones. Logan Diggs was good in his 2 years at Notre Dame. They've had some really good running backs. Chris Tyree as a freshman was a pretty darn good player.
I mean,
they've had some really CJ Prosise in 20. I mean, we didn't count CJ Prosise in this. He was eligible, but the problem with CJ is he only played 1 year. We only got 1 year of CJ in this time frame, where with all the other guys we got 2 to 3. That's the reason for me why CJ's not on this list. It's just
same.
He had the 1 year.
And he's the only person on that list, if I remember. Well, Josh Adams kind of in 2017, but he's the only running back on this list where it's like the injuries towards the end of the season also played a role in what his production could have been. I mean, you could argue J Love in 2024, but I mean, they
still played. Like, to your point about Josh was banged up in November of 2017, but he still played.
Right.
He didn't miss games. CJ missed a bunch of games. And what happened when he went down? Josh Adams came in and was every bit as good as CJ was.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could argue in some ways Josh was even more productive. If you go CJ that year was 6.6 behind that offensive line. Josh was 7.1 behind that offensive line. So and this is why Jeremiah Love is so much greater than everybody else, even though his numbers this year weren't significantly better than what Audric's were in 2023. But could you imagine if Jeremiah Love ran? Somebody in the chat said this. Could you imagine what his numbers would look like if he was there from 2015 to 2017? What his numbers would have looked like?
He would have had close to 6,000 career rushing yards. I mean, honestly, that would have been
seriously. Yeah.
That would have been filthy.
Yep. Yeah. That really would have been a lot of fun to watch. No doubt.
From Tom Redinger, what did you think of Rudolph talking about Will Black playing guard last year is basically getting him more reps? Am I wrong? Rudolph views O-line positions as interchangeable more than I think?
To a degree, but I don't think that, the interchangeable part, I don't have a problem with. I've said before, I would recruit a bunch of tackles and move the ones who don't fit at guard to guard. And now there's a line. I don't want a 6'8" offensive line across the board.
Sure.
But, look, that's how Heastan recruited. I mean, Sam Mustipher played tackle in high school. There were very few pure interior players he recruited. Trevor Ruland was one. Tristan Hodge, I think, was one. But most of the guys he recruited were high school tackles or started at tackle. I mean, Jared Patterson played tackle his first year at Notre Dame. So I don't have any problem with the interchangeable nature because, look, it's like if Will Black is clearly one of your 5 best players, but you've got Charles Jagasaw. Let's say Charles Jagasaw would have stayed at left tackle after the title game. Doesn't get hurt. Comes into goes through the spring playing left tackle in 2025. And, they don't move him the right guard. And let's say he doesn't get hurt, starts at left tackle this year. He's great. Gerby's stepping in at right tackle. And you're like, okay, what do we do? Are you just going to leave Will Black as your backup left tackle just because he's a tackle? Or are you going to say, hey, man, we're going to give him a chance to compete somewhere and play for us? So in some ways, moving Will Black around was a compliment to Will Black. The problem I had was, that he did it as much. Let him learn tackle first And then just his explanation of, well, we know he can play tackle. We want to get, and it wasn't that just because like I think we're not really, it was a stupid comment, but we're also not relaying it in the proper context. He wasn't saying, well, he knows how to play tackle, so we're just going to move him to guard full time. In the comment, he did say this gives him a chance to compete at that position, meaning like there's no path for him starting right now at tackle. There may be a path for him being there at guard because of Jagasol's injury. Remember, this came shortly after Charles Jagasol's injury. There was some uncertainty about who was going to play guard. So they didn't do anything different with Will Black than they did with Gerby Lambert. We want to move him inside to see if he can compete and maybe he can help us this year. And they realized he wasn't as ready to play there as other guys. That's when they should have moved him right back out to tackle. The minute you realize that he wasn't going to go out there and actually play for you, you should have moved him back out to tackle and let him learn there. That's my issue with it. But to say it is like he already knows how to play tackle, it's like that was my problem with the comment. It was like he could have just said this, listen, we think his future's at tackle, but in the present, there's some uncertainty about our depth chart at guard. Charles went down with an injury. We're going to move Gerby and give him some look there. Will's a very talented player. We think he might be able to help us this year. The path to that is to guard, so we want to get him some work at guard to see where he is and allow him to compete at an open spot. That's how the comment should have been made. So I just think it was a really dumb, clunky comment, but the context behind it was understandable. What my issue was and why I still make fun of the comment is that he left him there for so much of practices. That's what I thought was a poor decision. Once you realized he wasn't going to be a factor at guard, you should have moved him back out to tackle and let him play there. That's what they should have done. That's more of my issue with it.
100%. From Jay Melvin, what was worse about Brian Kelly's recent interview? The fact that he tore down an apartment complex to build his dream home, or that his number one priority at Notre Dame wasn't winning a national championship?
Well, I don't have look, it'd be super easy for me to bag on Brian Kelly. He says enough dumb things. He's very easy to tear apart because he just says so much stupid stuff. And somebody said earlier, he's incredibly tone deaf. Once again, I don't know the context of the apartment thing. I don't know if if it had already been kind of sold and it didn't have any current tenants in it, like it was not going to be renovated and used anymore. I mean, there's a lot of new apartments going up in this area. Maybe this one was like, okay, people are moving over here and over there. There's no need to restore it. There's just, I don't know the context of it. So without knowing the context of them tearing down the apartment complex to build a house, it's hard for me to say that was the dumber comment. Not, like not being brought to Notre Dame to win a championship was kind of a dumb. And I read the entire comment and I read it in context. And he talked about, no, obviously that was a goal. No. Now, if he bought a property and had people kicked out of their homes and so he could have a better house, that would bother me. Like there's plenty of farmland around here that's, goodness gracious, dude. But yeah, without knowing the context of the tearing down the apartment, like we're just banging on him. Like, I don't know that we'd have the same reaction if we found out that like Marcus Freeman tore down an apartment complex and built a home. Because we would be like, hey, hold on now. Let's see the context of, was this a condemned building? You know what I mean? Like, we don't know. Was it already going to get torn down and they were going to sell it to create an office building, but Kelly bought it and to build a home? Like, the context of that is going to determine whether or not I'm going to bang on him for that comment or not. And that's why, to be fair, that's why I say the other one is dumber.
Yeah. Do I think he underachieved at Notre Dame and is vastly overrated and kind of a liar? Yeah, but do I think that he was having people evicted from where they live so he could build a dream house? No, I gotta believe that he didn't, because he's a bad coach. I don't think he's like a villain. Like, I don't think he's like some corporate evil villain like we see in movies sometimes. Now, I could be wrong, because to Brian's point, we don't know the context. For me, it's the number one priority wasn't winning a national championship. That was dumb for two reasons. One, it confirmed what a lot of people had already thought. So just openly admitting that in an interview was really stupid. Like, whether that was the actual goal or not, that was dumb. But two, it's also dumb because for all the reasons that we've talked about before. It's just you confirmed what everybody thought. And how are you at a place like Notre Dame that has 11 national championships go out and say that that wasn't the number one priority? Like, God, come on, dude. Kick rocks.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are we doing?
Love that part. That's my favorite part of your comment. Kick rocks. Absolute favorite part of my comment.
From Trev's buy-sell hold glasses, if both players played to their potential at the same time, who wins more snaps, the great one or the golden one? Jaden Greathouse or Dallas Golden?
Well, if we're talking 2026, I would say Jaden Greathouse because he's a senior and Dallas is a sophomore. If we could take the max version of whatever Jaden Greathouse is going to be, and then the max version of whatever Dallas Golden could be, then it'd be Dallas Golden.
Yeah.
Like if they were both in the same class and getting similar development and opportunities, I would probably go with Dallas Golden on that one.
Same. Another one from Trev. What are your thoughts on Will Pauling's Goog Rat comment on X? I hoped it would have meant more consistent effort on his routes, personally.
I didn't see it. I'll look it up now. Trev, did you happen to see the comment?
Nope.
Yeah, so I can't really tell you. He did it on Twitter. I don't see anything.
I think it's I know that he put up like a video about something, but I don't know if it mentioned being a Goog Rat or.
Yeah, let me try to see if I can find some context of this comment. So, yeah, he was referred to as a Goog Rat, relentless work ethic and constant presence in the Goog. I mean, that's why he was a captain. Reading it in that comment, that's why he was a captain. Yeah, he ran routes that way because he was allowed to run routes that way.
Another one from Trev. Are there some draft pro days that might have hurt player stock? Ergo, Makai Lemon's 40 did not look impressive.
If you're going to drop, if you watched a lot of film and you thought Makai Lemon was a top 10 player and you're going to drop him now because of the 40, I don't think you're a good evaluator. You watch him run the 40. It was the most awkward thing I've ever seen. He has no clue how to run a 40, which doesn't, I mean, he's an awkward dude. Like that's a weird dude.
What?
Like, I don't know what kind of trance thing he was trying to do in his press is. And I'm like, this is a weird dude, but like people probably already knew that, it's not like somebody's like, oh, he's a great kid. And then you meet him, and you're like, this isn't what I mean, people probably already know. He was never a burner. He's super fast and sudden. Like he's super, not fast. He's super twitchy and sudden. That's what makes Makai Lemon really good. We've never said like this dude's a burner. Like that's not his game. A high 4.4 is nothing to sneeze at. Said some teams had him at 4.48, some teams had him at 4.53. That was his range. But you watch him run, and he's got that weird like drop step thing where he like lands on his heel, and then I'm like, dude, he'll never run like that in the NFL. How do I know that? Because I've watched him run hundreds of routes, and he's never had that weird thing. Does the film show him to be slow or not? Does the film show him struggling to get separation or not? Same with Cardinal Tate. Does the film show him struggling to get separation or not? That's the question. And I don't think that those were necessarily giant issues for those guys. Now, do I think Makai Lemon and Cardinal Tate are top 10 caliber players in most draft classes? No. In this one, probably. If they're both coming out the same year that Malik Neighbors did in the 24 draft class, they're top 20 picks. They're in the, I mean, let me rephrase. They're meaning 20 to 32 is what I'm kind of referring to. There may be early second round picks like Michael Pittman and guys like that. But in this draft class, which is in my opinion, and I agree with because I know college football, I don't know the NFL. I agree with the people that are saying this is not a good draft class at most positions. Even running back, where you're going to get like a franchise player and then another first round pick from Notre Dame. After that, there's not a lot of guys that I view as like, oh yeah, that guy's definitely a starter in the NFL.
Yeah. Do I think it should? No, Trev, I don't think that it should. But the reality is there are some people, some analysts, some reputable, some not, some GMs, some reputable, some not, that they will take that into effect. I think it's dumb.
Which is
I
why they
do.
keep drafting in the top 10. That's who
Yeah.
does that. It's the teams that are always picking in the top 10.
Yeah. 100%. But in turn, will it hurt their stock to a degree? Sure. I mean, Daniel Jeremiah has been somebody that I've liked a lot of his mocks that he's put out. I've liked a lot of his prospect lists that he's put out. After Malachi Fields ran a 4.61 40-yard dash, he dropped him out of his top 50 prospects. Do I agree with it? No. But is that the reality of it? Yeah, unfortunately it is. So
For him.
do I
Right.
yeah,
For him. Right.
yeah. So do I think in some lights it hurts some people's draft stock? Yeah, because I think it's a flawed system anyways.
That's why some teams always pick in the top 10. I keep saying that all the time. That's why some teams are always picked there, because they fall in love with they fall in love with certain things, and it's like, dude, you have plenty of film that shows you this guy's not slow. But I would also say that if you watched Makai Lemon and you thought he was a top 10, you gave him a top 10, because you may take a guy in the top 10 that you don't give a top 10 grade to. Because there's some teams that, hey, we got the number 32 pick and we only had 15 guys graded out as first round picks. You know what I mean? Like, you got to reach.
Mm-hmm.
He may be the top 10 in this draft class, but he doesn't get a top 10 grade. So top 10 grade is like, I rank the guy in this range independent of what this particular draft class looks like. It's kind of how we do our rankings, top 50 range. Sometimes the number 50 player in the country might be number 65 in another year because it's a deeper year. But in other years, he might be 35 because it's not as deep of a year. So, I personally would just load up on other positions and take receiver and some of these other positions in round 2. I just would. I don't think any of those receivers are top 10 players.
I think you're going to see a lot of day of trades. I think you're going to see a lot of teams try to trade back this year because it's just outside of like 5 guys, there's nobody that's really a top 10 prospect in this draft.
I agree. One more from Trev.
What shows does your significant other watch that you initially didn't care for but got sucked in midway through the season?
Mine was The Office. Early in our marriage, my wife, I think it was like it had already started, but my wife had to watch The Office for a class she was taking. She was working on her bachelor's. And I was like, I don't want to watch that stupid show. I've seen previews of it. It looks stupid to me. And then she just kept laughing and laughing. And, my wife doesn't audibly laugh a lot at movies. She just kind of smirks and, giggles. She doesn't like, and so I was like, all right, let me watch a stupid show. I flipping loved it. She was like midway through season 1. I was like, oh, this is phenomenal. This is great. That'd be one for me.
Gosh. There's probably 2 for me. One of them's Peaky Blinders. That show's cool. Like, I'm a big fan of that show now. The other one, and I hate to admit it, but I'll always tell the truth. My wife loves trash TV. Like all that stuff on that, like Love is Blind, like her and all her girlfriends love like The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, like that crazy show, like all that garbage TV stuff. And some of them got me before, where it's just like I'm kind of doing the thing where I'm like standing, we're having a conversation at like the edge of the couch and that show's on. Then I'll sit down and I'll start watching it. And then the next thing I know, I'm 3 episodes in. So, probably one of those.
So maybe you and Chief have something in common. Yeah.
My wife is just more of a TV show person, man. Like if my wife is somebody where if she watches a movie once, she's done. Like she'd be like, yep, I've seen that movie and I just don't have to watch it again. And I'm like, that's crazy. Like I'm not, but that's why she loves TV shows. Cause then she can be like, okay, I'm done with that TV show. I don't have to watch it again. On to the next
episode.
TV show.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. My wife made me watch The Bachelor one year and I was like, never again. She's like, you're going to like it by the end. And I was like, no, I'm not. And that time I was right. I was like, this is the stupidest thing ever. This is so fake. There's nothing reality about reality TV.
No, it's all scripted.
The minute cameras are there, unless you're going to do some Truman Show type of thing, the minute cameras are there, it's no longer reality. That's garbage. All right, let's go. We got, here we go.
Which museums, sorry, from Sean Stewart, which museums have you been to or would like to go to that are around the US?
I haven't been to a lot of museums in my day, Trev. We used to go to the Neil Armstrong Museum in Wapakoneta, Ohio all the time when I was a kid, which I loved. I went through an astronaut phase as a kid, and then I watched the Challenger blow up, and I was like, I'm good. So, and I don't
Yeah.
say that jokingly. I mean, I was really big into the space program. Before the Challenger exploded, my parents had bought me a picture on for my desk of that crew because that was a big mission. You know, they made a big
Yeah.
deal out of it. You had the teacher, and she was going to teach lessons from space and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, that was. But I used to love to go to the Neil Armstrong Museum. There's a lot of I'd love to go to a lot of the the stuff from. There's a lot of those museums in like DC and Philadelphia. I'd love to go to. I'd love museums. I've just never really gone to them. I want to go to the Dinosaur Museum out in South Bend. I want to go. I've talked to Ange. I've told her I want to go to that one. They have that. I don't know how old it is, Trev, how long it's been around there, if you've ever been to it. But I only noticed it within the last year or two. And I want to go to that one because I think those are pretty cool. But yeah, I've been to some car museums. There was a Ronald McDonald house museum. It wasn't for necessarily McDonald's, but it was a lot of stuff in Lima, Ohio, where I went to. But I'd love to go to more museums. I just couldn't tell you which ones they necessarily are.
Yeah, I was an astronaut space kid too. Though that and dinosaurs were my two big things growing up. So I get you there. Dinosaur.
Did you have a favorite dinosaur when you were a kid?
Oh, heck yeah.
What was it?
Oh, it was a velociraptor. Those things are nuts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mine was I don't know why, but mine was the Allosaurus. I just thought
Yeah, man. That was the T-Rex before the T-Rex.
Yeah, and it was more faster, and just it wasn't but it was it was my favorite one.
Yeah, man. It was so there's a new dinosaur documentary on Netflix. It was produced by Steven Spielberg and narrated by Morgan Freeman.
Nice. I have to check that out.
Have
to check that out.
Prime cinema. But the museums I've been to, so we took a trip when I was 11 to Washington, D.C., and I want to go back to where I have more of an appreciation for that stuff. But even at 11, the Natural Air and Space Museum was sick. That kind of jump started my love for planes. So
I went there when I was a kid. We did this. I was in this group called Kids from Bath. We sang, and when the year I was in Kids from Bath, there was this big national thing. We were going to sing on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial and all this other kind of stuff. And we ended up not going to do that part, but we sang at some of the other things on the way. But we went there, there, and we did some of the other DC stuff, which was pretty cool. We went to Mount Vernon, which was pretty awesome. Yeah, it was pretty sweet. What tripped me out when I learned later in life that not all dinosaurs lived at the same time. Not all species of dinosaurs lived at the same time. Stegosaurus, Brontosaurus. There were eras where this one was gone by the time this one was. I did not know that as a kid. I just kind of thought they all were together at the same time.
No, I get that. I think it's so tough because you have the Triassic, the Jurassic, and then the Cretaceous periods, and then it's some of the most iconic ones are from the Cretaceous period. That's where you had the Triceratops and Velociraptors were at their peak then, the Tyrannosaurus. But I think the longest period was the Jurassic. That's when you had the Stegosaurus, the Allosaurus, all that stuff. Yeah, man.
Yeah, learned something. For me, as a kid, it was the dinosaur era. It wasn't all that other stuff. They're just dinosaurs. Yeah.
From Bobby S., what do you think of the 27 running back board? Do you think we get the Jeremiah Love bump where the top running backs want to be the next? Will that come more so in the 28 and future classes if he's an elite pro?
Well, that depends on J1 Sider more than it does Jeremiah Love. I mean, you've got to identify the right guys and recruit the right guys and connect with guys and do all that kind of stuff. And that's what he's going to have to prove at Notre Dame. He did a nice job last year, but I think they got a bit of a Jeremiah Love bump last year with Jonas Walton and Javion Osborne. This class is a little bit different because it's not a great class overall. It's a good running back class. It's not as good as last year's running back class. Last year's running backs class was insanely good, which is why they took two. And I think that's kind of got them in a position now where maybe it's not as attractive as a depth chart as it was for Javion and Jonas, because Javion and Jonas are walking a situation where it's Aeneas, Kedron, and Nolan James. That's it. Where the 27 running backs are walking a situation where it's Kedron, Aeneas, Nolan, Javion, and Jonas. You know what I mean? Where it's like, it's just a little bit different situation. I don't know that they're going to get a great back in 27. I also think they made a strategic mistake of not recognizing sooner what I think that I recognized a lot sooner, which is that Keemon Spell wasn't coming to Notre Dame. Even if he committed to Notre Dame, he wasn't going to end up at Notre Dame. And I think that caused them to be late on some top guys. And so teams like Oregon and Texas are ahead of them with some other kids. There's still some good players on the board they have a shot with. I think if they can have a really good visit this spring with Trey Segara, I think they can make a move there. I think they're in a really good position with Isaiah Rodgers. Other schools are too. But I think they'll close on one of those guys. Maybe they can get Lathan Wissington to, really fall in love with Notre Dame. I mean, they're not in any worse place with any of those guys than they were with Javion Osborne before he visited last year. Remember that? He was not digging. I mean, he liked Notre Dame enough to visit, but he didn't love Notre Dame. I had people at Notre Dame tell me, yeah, we don't think we're going to get him, but we're going to take our shot. What worst thing he can do is tell us no. And they took their shot, and he was in love with Notre Dame coming out of that. Like, I had somebody at Michigan call me, and he's like, yeah, I don't know what the heck Notre Dame promised him, but he was all but done for us. And now it's like, we're out. He's going, like, when he picked between Notre Dame and Michigan, it was like, there was no picking. Everybody knew where he was going. Michigan knew where he was going. And so, we'll see how these spring visits go. That's going to be a big part of it. But there's enough really good players on the board that I think they'll be in an okay position to get one of them when they come out of the spring visits. 28 is going to be interesting. I want to see what they do in 28. There's two guys. I already have my dream 28 class, and it's Zayden Jernigan and Xander Edwards. That's what I think they should do in 28. I don't know that they're going to get Zayden Jernigan, but he's the best running back on the board right now. That includes Keemon Spell. He's the most talented running back that they're recruiting in high school right now. And he's a 28 kid. He's a stud. We'll see what they do, but I think the 28 is when you'll hopefully see when that's going to be. Like that impact payoff. If it doesn't pay off by 2028, then we have to realize that Jaywan Sider's just not that guy as a recruiter. I'm not saying he is or isn't. I'm saying I'm not judging him based on the 27 class in that. Just because it's a different circumstance. And right. In this era of portal, you got to be smart. You're just not going to get the same two dudes. You're not going to get two dudes every year that are studs because you're going to lose a bunch of them. So spread them out a little bit. Because the thing about it, if you're in the 28 class, okay, I come back, I'm the number 2 or number 3 running back as a freshman. If Javion and Jonas or whoever the starter is probably leaves as a junior, and then now as a sophomore, I'm stepping up, and then I'm the dude for 2 years, and then that's kind of how it goes. Whereas right now, it's like if you're in the 27 class, you're like, not only do I got to wait maybe a couple years for those guys, but then I'm a year behind Jonas and Javion for my time. I just think it's a tougher sell. So that's what I'm saying. I'm not judging. There's no judgment for me on Jaywan Sider if he doesn't land an elite top 50 player at running back this year. There's just not a lot of those at running back anyway. But you give me a certain group of guys, and I'll be happy. You give me Trey Segara, Isaiah Rodgers, Lathan Wissington, somebody like that. I'm a happy guy. Now you end up with Wayne Shanks, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna hold judgment till next year, but that's kind of where I'm at with that.
Good deal.
Yeah.
From Brandon Gilbert, considering the success that Notre Dame is continuing to have on the recruiting trail, is it possible that the Marcus Freeman NFL stuff has died down even more? Heard him say he plans to stay for a long time on 3.
That was an encouraging thing to hear because you and I have said before that Marcus Freeman's a very honest guy. So, but I think you guys have to understand the psyche of a football coach and how it changes throughout the year. I think right now, Marcus Freeman's completely bought into being the head football coach at Notre Dame. If he wasn't, he wouldn't be here. He absolutely believes what he says. I don't think Marcus Freeman's a liar. I've never thought like this guy's full of crap. The things that I know he says that aren't necessarily true, things he has to say. You can't just come out there and certain things you just can't say. And I get it. Well, it's dishonest. Well, that's fine. But, you ask me what our first 10 plays of a game are, I'm not going to freaking tell you. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry. Hey, this guy's got a really bum left ankle. So, hey, opponents, don't twist it in a pile, please. There's certain things that just we don't need to know. But does that mean he's going to still feel that way after the long grind of the season and you get into the offseason and this rules change and that rules change and the team that he really likes in the NFL comes calling? I don't know, guys. Like I'll say what I know. I'm just accepting the fact we're going to keep getting asked about this like all the time. I understand that. Here's the deal. I know one thing I know 100% for certain. Marcus Freeman is going to be the head football coach at Notre Dame in 2026. And that's all I care about right now. We'll cross the 27 and beyond bridge when we get there. But right now, my focus is on the 26 season. That's all I can worry about. And if Marcus Freeman changes his mind and some job comes along, it is what it is. If he's here for the next 10 years, it is what it is. I would prefer the latter. I would love for Marcus Freeman to stay here long term. And for me as a business owner, that's not necessarily like in every regard great for us, because Notre Dame being good is great for us, but we get less and less and less access every year. But for Notre Dame, it's better that Marcus Freeman's head coach. And then from a business standpoint, it is good for us because they're good. And it makes it more enjoyable for me, as frustrated as I get by how he is towards the media. It's not good. I also like covering a coach who's a pretty respectable guy and does things, I think, the right way and seems to value Notre Dame. So if he's here for 10 years, that's awesome. If he's not, well, nothing I can do about it. So I'm not going to, what am I going to say? I'm going to focus on 26 and hopefully they go out and win a title. And if he decides to stay at Notre Dame after that, awesome. If not, we'll cross that bridge. But I really just don't want to keep having to answer NFL questions all off season. I believe today, right now, March 13th, Marcus Freeman absolutely believes he's going to stay at Notre Dame long term. He has to think that. That's the mindset he has to have right now if he's going to be bought in, and I do think he's bought in. But can you promise me that you know how he's going to feel the day after winning the championship if the Dallas Cowboys come calling? Do you really know that you can guarantee that his thoughts won't be somewhere else? You don't know that, because that's a universe that does not exist yet. That's a reality that does not exist yet that none of us can control, including Marcus Freeman. So I'm just going to worry about 2026.
Yeah, man. You bring up a really good point about the psyche piece. One of my best friends is a corporate accountant. And 4 months out of his 12-month year is a grind. And anybody who has friends or family members who are corporate accountants know that. They're working 6 to 7 days a week. They're working 14-hour days for 4 months of the year. Does that sound familiar to anybody else's job? And during that time, their psyche is like, why do I keep doing this? Is the grass greener somewhere else? Is the grass greener in a different profession? Maybe. But then in their off season, they're working 4 days a week. They get Fridays off. They're taking vacations. They're working 8-hour days, maybe. And that kind of gets them ready for the next run. I think with Marcus Freeman, he's a very transparent person, which I appreciate. Sometimes, though, his level of transparency can lead to a lot of questions like this. But I'm with you. I'm not talking about, well, I don't want to say I'm not going to, but it's hard for us to answer questions like this. The same with how many statues is he going to have built? How many gates is he going to have named after him? Because it's all stuff that we just don't know yet.
Speaking of,
from Tommy Toughnuts, how many head coaches do you think are in their destination jobs that they'll retire from?
I mean, look, Trev, that's a short list of anyone that's not in their 60s or 70s, because you don't always have control over you retiring from a school. I think Kyle Whittingham would have liked to have retired from Utah, but guess what? It's a two-way street. So I hope Marcus Freeman, but who knows? I've seen a lot of people talk about Dabo coaching somewhere else. I don't think Dabo coaches anywhere other than Clemson. I just don't. I think he's going to retire at Clemson. When will that be? It's a great question. I think this next season is going to go a long way towards determining that, how well they're all are on the field, plus with how well they recruit. I could see Kirby Smart going to the NFL at some point in time, but I don't think Kirby Smart ever coaches at another college, and I don't know that he would be an NFL coach either. I could,
Oh
you know,
yeah,
I think Kirby Smart's a Georgia lifer, and unless they fire him, but if he does leave, it'd be for the NFL.
that's
in my opinion.
That's how I feel about Ryan Day. Like, I don't think he goes anywhere else in college. It's just if he takes another job, it'll be in the NFL. Now, he's younger than Kirby, not by a lot. Wait, Kirby might. I'm not sure what their ages are. I remember looking at one of their ages and being shocked that Kirby's younger. I just felt like Kirby had this prowess about him that he was like in his 60s, and I think he's like in his 40s.
Yeah, he's 50. He just turned 50 in December.
Okay.
So when you looked at it, he was probably still his 40s.
Yeah. So I think Ryan Day is another one of those. And also, I think Curt Cignetti. I don't see him going anywhere else besides Indiana.
I think he'll retire from Indiana. I don't think Ryan Day will retire from Ohio State, though. Like you said, I think he's going to go to the NFL. And potentially sooner rather than later.
Sure.
Which is, I think, why he's stacking up with a lot of NFL assistant coaches. Makes that transition a whole lot easier. Trying to think through some of these. I think Cignetti's a great one, Trev. I'm just going to kind of pull up.
Kirk Ferentz.
Oh, yeah. I mean, again, as long as he doesn't get fired, like,
Right.
He's one. Again, if he wins, I don't see Matt Campbell coaching anywhere other than Penn State the rest of his career. That's another one. I don't see Mario Cristobal coaching anywhere other than Miami unless he gets fired. I don't see him going to the NFL. I think he'll be at Miami as long as they keep him. What's up? Who you think?
What do you think about James Franklin at Virginia Tech?
No, I think James Franklin will get the itch to be at a quote-unquote big-time school again. I hope not. I would love it if James Franklin spent the next 10, 15 years at Virginia Tech. I think that's perfect. I think it's a perfect place for him, and I think he could do very well there. And I don't say that in an insulting manner whatsoever. I genuinely believe that. I think when you've tasted that level like a Penn State, I think it can, you're at a place where like we're expected to win championships and stuff like that. You're paid a certain amount of money. I think you're that competitor in you kind of gets that. There's going to be that right job that comes along for him. But I would love it if he was one. Love it if he was one. Jeff Brom's an interesting one because in some ways I could see him leaving to go somewhere else if the right job came along. But in other ways, I'm like, I could also see him being a lifer at Louisville. I think he used the interest from other programs this offseason to get more from Louisville. I think he played the game, and that's smart. I think Kalani Sitake turning down Penn State makes him a lifer at BYU. Some people may push back on that, like, dude, he almost left. He almost left for Penn State. Like, that's a big-time job. If you're not going to take the Penn State job, I don't know that he's not going to go to, like, Tuscaloosa. And I don't know that he's going to be someone that Texas goes after. And let's be honest about something else. The only reason Penn State even considered him is because they had already struck out on, like, a lot of other candidates. So I think now that he kind of went through that period, I think he'll be a lifer there. Colin Klein at Kansas State. I see that one being one that, like, I don't know that he's going to go anywhere else. I think that's one. Go ahead, Trev. Throw one out
you're
there.
good. Sorry, Buck is wanting some stage time, I think.
It's okay. I bring Regan Sadie on all the time, so you're good.
Oh, yeah, man. He's wanted some attention. But one that I'm keeping my eye on that I could potentially see might fill him into the NFL bucket. Who knows? Steve Sarkisian at Texas. I don't know if there's another collegiate job that he would leave Texas for. If Alabama lets go of Kalen DeBoer here sometime in the next couple of years, I don't see him going from Texas to Alabama. I don't. If Kirby retires or leaves, I don't see him going to Georgia. So he could be a sneaky lifer at Texas if he doesn't get fired.
Yep, that's a good one. I think if Brent Venables can win, I don't see him looking to leave Oklahoma. I don't, as long as he wins. I could see Brett Bielema staying at Illinois. I could see him just being happy there and just never wanting to leave. I think Kyle Whittingham will retire at Michigan. It's a different situation, but I think he'll retire from Michigan. Here's a surprising one. I would say right now, as of today, I feel more confident that Dan Lanning wants to spend the next decade at Oregon than I do that Marcus Freeman wants to spend the next decade at Notre Dame. I could be wrong on that, and I hope I'm wrong. And that's why I loved what Marcus Freeman said to J.D. Pickell or whatever his name is. I hope he truly means that, because I want Marcus Freeman to retire from Notre Dame as a legend. That's what I want to happen. And I think Dan Lanning will do the same thing at Oregon. I think he's genuinely – because if you ever notice, he doesn't get linked to many jobs, but when he does, he immediately is like, no thanks. He doesn't use them to get more money. He'll go, hey, look, I'm getting interest, but, give me more. But he's very adamant. I'm not going anywhere. And he doesn't play the agent game of let my name be out there for a while so I can then go back to Oregon and get more of this, get more of that. They already do a great job of supporting. Every time his name's mentioned, he's like, guys, I'm not going anywhere. And then his name is no longer linked to that job. It's not like the BS, I'm not going anywhere, and then a month later he's going somewhere. Like, it's like his name then just gets off the map with those schools. So I think he genuinely loves it out there. I really do. Those would be the main ones that I could see. Pat Fitzgerald at Michigan State, that's another one. If he wins, I don't think he'll go. I think that's a perfect fit for him in a lot of ways.
I think we already talked about him, but I think Kyle Whittingham retires at Michigan.
Yeah,
I don't know if he goes anywhere else after.
I agree, especially at his age.
Yeah.
And I think that'll be 4 or 5 years. I think he'll get Michigan turned around as a program and turn it over to somebody else.
From the history expert, the Navy game seems to move around on the schedule. Would y'all prefer it to be the same week every year?
So in a contradiction of what I said everywhere else, the main rival I want to be, here's when the game is going to be played. Your main rival, Notre Dame USC, should be the last game of the regular season every year. And if they don't want to play you and you want to play Miami, make it the last game of the regular season every year. That's what I think. I think the one of the great things I love about the Navy game is it allows you to have some positional flexibility, schedule flexibility, because Navy is willing to kind of move it to whenever. They'll play in week 1, they'll play in week 10, they'll play whenever. I think that it's good to have that kind of game that you can move around to fit in other teams onto your schedule. So that is the one that I'm okay keeping where it is. I think Purdue should always be in the first month of the season. I think Michigan State should always be in the first month of the season, which means 4 to 5 weeks. I like that Navy can move around. I think that's advantageous for Notre Dame. That is the one rival that if you were going to say, hey, we need to start, let's say Navy was like, listen, with our conference, we're going to 9 conference games and we already have Navy. Can we try to get something regular? Then I'd say, okay, then you play them in week 1 every year.
Yep.
Make them your opener and then just get that out of the way. That's what you're doing last 2 weeks fall camp. And then you're done with it. And then you're playing Rice or some MAC team the next week every year, or Purdue the next week every year. So I'd be willing to do that if Navy needed that. But if Navy doesn't ask for that, then I'm moving it around every year. And it's a nice chess, not even chess piece, but it's just a nice puzzle piece that you can just kind of fit everywhere. It's like, it's adaptable. And I think that's good to have one of those type of teams that they're always on your schedule and you can move it around to fit your other team's scheduling needs. I like that.
Absolutely. From Bobby S., if you had to bet your mortgage on one freshman from each side of the ball who is most impactful this season, who are you going with? Bobby S. said he's going with Ian Premer on offense and Rodney Dunham on defense.
It's hard to disagree with that one. I mean, I'm not betting my mortgage on anything, but other than the fact that I plan on paying my mortgage the beginning of every month, that's about the only thing I'd be willing to bet.
Betting the mortgage on the mortgage, huh?
Yeah, exactly. I promise you I'm going to be paying my mortgage the first of every month or the beginning of every month. I think those are 2 good bets. Of the 2, I would even feel even better about Dunham than I would anybody else, just because we've talked about, Joey O'Brien's going to need, there's some really good veteran players ahead of him. Same with Karyat. Pardon me. Offensively, I think there's a world in which one of the running backs could end up having a bigger impact than Ian Premer. Maybe a Caden Finley could have a bigger impact, or potentially barring if there's an early fall camp injury up front, I could see a Tyler Merrill or a Grayson McHugh or a Sullivan Garvin making a hard charge to playing as a freshman. But I'd say Premer and the running backs and Caden Finley and Bubba Frazier would probably be in the top 5 right now for me as far as who's going to have a shot to play as freshman. If Ian Premer was going to be here this spring, it's a done deal. Absolute done deal.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Trev.
But I would say it's probably Javian Osborne right now would be my pick on offense. And then defensively, just because of track record, and I know it's interesting to say this because they probably have the hardest path to do it, but I'd say one of the freshman corners. We've just seen a freshman play in Notre Dame secondary like every year. So that's probably what I would go with. I can't tell you how, and I'm not going to speak it into existence of getting an opportunity because somebody's out, but I'm going to go with one of the freshman corners.
I love your logic, but that reality is also partly why I don't think that one of the freshmen is going to necessarily play a corner, because you've done such a great job of bringing those other players in, and they're all playing now. They're all still kind of here. You've got Christian Gray still here. That's kind of why I'm like, I don't know. Had they not gone to the portal to get Jaden Sanders and DJ McKinney, I'm right there with you for the same exact reasons, Trev. Same exact reasons. All right, last couple before we get out of here. Here's an interesting one from Tommy Tough Nuts, Trev. Which remakes, songs, or movies do you like better than the original, and vice versa?
Oh, gosh. Remakes of movies that I like better than the original or songs? Oh, gosh. I don't know if I can think of any off the top of my head.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. Well, I'll say this. I mean, it's not really a remake, but I thought the new Kong was better than any of the old King Kong movies. I never liked that King Kong was like, you and I were talking about like Godzilla and all that, and we were off the air. We're talking about this and like how Godzilla was kind of better when he was like the bad guy. I was the exact opposite with King Kong. I never liked that they made King Kong kind of the misunderstood bad guy in the old movies. I didn't like that. I don't know why. I just never. I honestly don't know a lot of other movies that are Ocean's 11. That's one.
I mean, I guess if we're like diving into like the depths of movies, like, I mean, they came out with like really bad like Marvel movies back in the day. And when I mean back in the day, I don't mean like the 2000s. I'm talking like the first ever Iron Man, the first ever Captain America that came out in like the 60s and the 70s. Like those were really bad. And so obviously the ones that came out in the Infinity Saga and the MCU were better. But I guess you could consider those remakes of songs. I couldn't even tell you.
Yep. I mean, there's a lot of movies that are sampled. I'd say, what was the Mariah Carey song? She had a song that was a remake that was phenomenal, and I'm for the life of me can't remember what it was. Oh man, goodness, I'd have to think about it, but yeah, I mean, there's like Tina Turner redid. What was the remake she did of a song that I thought was pretty good? Yeah, Mariah Carey redid a song, and I cannot remember which one it was, but I just remember thinking it was a great scene or a great song. But that's just because I think Mariah Carey has one of the greatest voices, female voices of all time. Like her and Whitney Houston have incredibly dynamic voices. So sometimes, like when somebody like that redoes a song, you're like, "Yep, I like that one better." You know what I mean? So I think part of it also determines, like, did you see the original first? Like, so there's been some movies where I saw the new and I was like, I didn't know that was a remake. And what was it? With Denzel. Oh man, Man on Fire. That was a remake. I didn't know that, and so I went back and watched the remake, and I was like, "No, that's terrible." Yeah. So that would be one. Like, had I watched the original first, maybe I would have been like, "Oh, that's not how the original was." You know what I mean? So it's like, it's kind of like what you saw first can lead to like, well, yeah, but you didn't do this that was in the original. You didn't do that that's in the original. Like, I think that can be part of it as well.
The only song that I can think of, have you guys, anybody in the chat, seen the movie Sinners? They did a remake to the song Rocky Road to Dublin. And that is a lot better than the original version of Rocky Road to Dublin. But that is literally the only song off the top of my head that I can think of. From Bobby S., what wide receiver in our rotation do we have that can take the top off of the defense? Is Graham or Porter that type? If not, I would guess Cam or Burris, but not sure we have one for sure.
Well, I think Porter can, size and speed. I mean, Malachi could, and I think Quincy Porter is at the very least as fast as Malachi, maybe faster. He's not as experienced. Mylan Graham to a degree can, but he's more of quick and shifty and explosive than he is maybe necessarily long speed. I think a player that has very underrated Cam definitely can if he can learn how to play the position. Trev, I think we were talking about this earlier, but a guy that is underrated in his ability to stretch the field is Micah Gilbert. He just either doesn't get thrown it or doesn't catch it. But I could show you some film. You're like, dude, I didn't know Micah Gilbert had it like that. He has got a second gear that's really, he just doesn't look super explosive coming off the ball. But once he gets going, he's got a really nice second gear to stretch the field. So that would be a guy that I think is a surprisingly good take the top off guy. He just has to finally put it all together and show it. That's where
Yep. I agree.
Aaron Valerio says, we all know the expectations for this 26 team. If they can't get it done this year, what's your confidence for the 27 team to get it? Aaron, it's so impossible to answer that question right now. I don't know who it is. Does CJ? You got to tell me. Does CJ Carr come back? Like does Boubacar come back? Does Leonard Moore? I mean, does Tay Johnson? Not Leonard Moore's gone. Does Tay Johnson and Don Schuler come back? Is Kingston back? Is Bryce Young back? Is Anthony Knapp back? Is Gerby Lambert? I just would need to kind of know who's going to be back. The portal, who leaves in the portal, who comes into the portal. There's so many things that I just don't know the answer to that I would need to know the answer to before I could answer this question. That's why I keep saying, like, it used to, back in the day, 5 years ago, I could answer this question. Like, listen, if they don't win it this year, you look the next year and boy, they're going to have this guy back. In the era of the transfer portal, I don't have a clue what next year's roster is going to look like. I really don't. If you'd have told me a year ago Francis Brew's going to be a guy that we're super excited about for Notre Dame, I'd have been like, who? Like, I mean, I kind of watched him a little bit, but like, who's Francis Brew? Would you have been excited about Notre Dame if I told you a year ago when Tion Gray was coming off of a red shirt season at Oregon? You're like, oh my goodness, we're going to get. Now, if I'd have told you they're going to get Quincy Porter and Mylan Graham, you'd have been pretty fired up because they were known recruits. If I'd have told you DJ McKinney's going to transfer, they were known commodities, but the other guys were not. So it just more than ever, I'm focused on this team because it's so hard to know what teams are going to look like from year to year. It really is.
Yeah, I'll say this, Aaron. At some point, there has to be a team that breaks the cycle of just wait until. Like, just wait until this coach is into year 2. Just wait until this coach is into year 3. Just wait until this player is into year 2. At some point, one of those teams has to break that cycle, and the kicking of the can down the road has to stop. And I think that could be and should be the 2026 team. Now, with that being said, I'm not one of the people that's national championship or bust or, their window closes after 26. As long as Marcus Freeman is in South Bend, the window to win the national championship will always be there. But I do think 26 is the best shot that they've had. The way that I look at it, without putting too much emphasis on this team, is if you don't do it with this team, with the best cornerback in the country and a defensive coordinator going into year 2 and your first returning starting quarterback since 2020, then it's like we're going to just kind of continue saying the same things year over year. And every year it's going to be this, but just wait until, so we'll see. But you just brought in the number 1 recruiting class in the country. So there's still warranted conversations to be had about just wait until Joey O'Brien's a sophomore. Just wait until Rodney Dunham's a sophomore. So the cycle will never stop.
And I would have said that a year ago about Jadon Blair.
Mm-hmm.
Wait till Jadon's a sophomore, junior. You just don't know.
Agreed.
You just don't know. Well, Trev, my man, that'll do it for today's show.
Well, good deal. Well, folks, that'll do it for us here today on the Irish Breakdown Podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Have a fun and safe weekend. If you're not done with Irish Breakdown content, the guys are going live here in about 45 or so minutes, 45, 50 minutes on IB Nation Sports Beat. It goes live at 5:05. Not going to want to miss tonight's episode. Brian and I will be back on Monday with Buy, Sell, Hold. That should be another really fun one. Make sure you guys come correct like you did today and like you did this past Monday with some Buy, Sell, Hold submissions.
We got practice next week.
And we have spring practice next week. Very excited for that. Going to be a lot of awesome content coming your way. On your way out of here, be sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell. Be sure to share this podcast with your friends and family, anybody that you know loves Notre Dame and college football as much as you do. But as always, the best way to support what we do here and the best way to stay in tune, because we do have practice next week, is to be a premium message board subscriber at boards.irishbreakdown.com. Have a fun and safe weekend, everybody. Until next time, that's Brian. I'm Trevor. We'll see you back here very soon on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.